This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com.
You hear the Humvees coming from the base, and you hear the whine of the Humvees, and then you hear boom, two giant booms, and you're like, oh snap, this is not good. And then I had just finished my watch of the people, and effective fire is coming into the house. PKM fire, AK fire is coming into the house, literally in this room that I'm sitting in front of. And I'm on the ground, and I was just like, it's 140 degrees in the house. There's no AC. I just wanted to take my kid off for 2 minutes. I fall asleep. Within 10 seconds of me falling asleep, effective fire is coming into the house.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. This week in the studio, what does it take to start your life over at 33, survive the Navy SEALs, then walk away from the only world you've ever known? In this raw and electrifying episode, we sit down with Ajay James, martial artist, senior chief SEAL, mentor, and Hollywood insider. What's going on, my friend?
What's going on, DJ? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm so happy that you're here. You know, Ty's in town, and he said you guys need to hook up, so we did, and we made this happen pretty quickly. So I'm so happy that you did this and so appreciative that you did it so quickly. You have an interesting story, not only because of where you came from, but everything that you've done in your life has never seemed, like I told you when we were talking on the phone, it never seems to really follow each other. It's always something different. It's always a new adventure with you. Let's start out like we always do back when you grew up, because it's interesting where you came from, then coming to Jersey, you know, and then kind of spreading out from there. So if we can, let's talk about your childhood and how it kind of shaped you into who you are today.
Yeah, great, interesting question. I came to America via my dad. My dad was a chemical engineer. He originally was a policeman in Trinidad and Tobago, and he got a scholarship to come to America, became a chemical engineer. He worked for a company called Inglehard, which became what's now BASF. And he did some pretty incredible work. But one of the biggest things about that whole thing was my dad, it's funny, I like to kind of laugh about it right now, but my dad was the worst married person ever. He got married like 4 or 5 times. My original mom died when I was a little kid, like 4 years old. But then my dad thought, okay, well, I've got these kids. I got to make sure they have a mom in the picture. So got married one time, got divorced. Got married a second time, got divorced. Got married a third time, got divorced. When he was about to go on number 4, I was like, yeah, I think I'm good. I don't need you to get me another mom anymore. So yeah, I think you are terrible at being married. How about you just don't worry about that?
When number 5's getting ready to happen, how old are you at that time?
Oh, by this time, I'm in my 20s.
And you tell him just we're good.
Yeah, we're good. You don't need to be married. You really don't. If you didn't get it right in 4, you ain't getting it right in 5. It's like, by that time, you got to think about Angela and Pamela, and that's about it. You don't need to be thinking about anything else. So,
well, what made him so bad at it?
Just, you know what? So he grew up in a different time, and don't mind the lights flickering on and off. So my electricity is going in and out, so don't mind the lights.
Okay.
It's a club in here right now. But yeah, he grew up in a time where he was West Indian male, and they had a hard upbringing. He didn't really get like a lot of, like, let's say what we would call now empathy training. He never, really learned, I think, how to appreciate a woman and a woman's values and a woman's touch, or, what women bring to the table. And I think he always thought that, it's a man's world. And not to say that, that there isn't a place for men's values or what men think or this and that. But back in the day where men completely ruled everything, that's what he came into. And he got beat when he was a kid. His mom, she had a bunch of other kids. So he has brothers and sisters from different dads in the West Indies. So he didn't really have that good structure, didn't have that good male structure behind him. So he didn't really get to see, like, okay, a mother and a father working cooperatively together to create a joint unified home. So I don't think he had any of that training. So he tried to recreate it. And without any sort of a template, how can you recreate that model? It's not going to happen.
So what do you think you learned from that as a kid, and then getting up? I mean, because you obviously matured from it, because at 20 you said, you know what, stop this. Let's
Yeah.
try another thing. So what do you think you took away from it?
What I took away from that was like, this is what not to do. And at first, for a long time, it was one of those things where I had to make the decision about whether or not if I wanted to get married or not. I'm a sucker for kids. I really love kids. I had some girlfriends back in the day. They had kids already, and I was very torn about whether or not if I was gonna be, hey, let's get together, let's get married. I'll help you raise your kid. But that's the thing with men. Men want to be fixers all the time. And so I felt that because I didn't have that good structure, I wanted to ensure that I was going to be a good dad. And if I did end up having kids, I wanted to make sure that I was going to be the dad that I didn't necessarily have. So I definitely made a big change away from that completely. And then the other thing too is just being really open-minded and open to other concepts, open to other people's points of view, and just being able, I think a lot of it also too is just being able to have good dialogue and conversation and be able to listen to other people's points and argue from a point where it's like, hey, we're both equal, we're both listening to what each other has to say, and we got to be able to either agree to disagree or be able to come with some sort of compromise. That I don't necessarily think that my dad understood. He didn't. He always thought that he had to be right, and I mean, and it kind of manifested itself in our home life as well. I got beat really bad as a kid, and I just never felt that that was what was going to be happening for me. I didn't want to do that, necessarily to my kids. I didn't want to necessarily grow up that way the whole entire time. So those were things that for me, they were hard stops. Like, okay, I got to stop that. I need to make a different template, a different model.
Well, let's talk about the beating for a minute, because I think it's important, because not only were you getting beatings at home, but you were bullied a lot as a kid too. And that's what turned you into martial arts and things like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how kind of growing up you're getting beat up at school, you're getting beat up at home. There's really no kind of space where you can go and just be you.
Yeah.
Do you think, even though that's a bad thing, do you think that helped you out later in life, in your fighting career, in your SEAL career, by knowing that shit could be bad anywhere that you're at, and it can be way worse than what was going on at that time?
Yeah. So imagine I used to get beat at home all the time. So getting into fights at school weren't necessarily that bad. But the thing is, the after effect of getting in the fight at school, because here I am, this immigrant kid. I mean, I have a little bit of an accent right now, but it used to be a whole lot more pronounced when I first came over here. But imagine going home after getting beat up from school and then having to go back home and tell my dad I got beat up in school, or he hears that from the principal that I got beat up in school. I was going to get it even worse for getting beat up in school. But it's like, okay, well, how the heck do I fight against these kids if I don't know how to fight? And there's a story. There was a girl in school, and I'm going to leave her unnamed. But it
Okay.
was a girl in school who bullied the crap out of me really bad, like to the point where I was just like, I felt like I would get like angst and agita from her beating me up and yelling at me and scoring my books and then intimidating me and this and that and the other. There was this one time where she was like, I'm going to kick your ass after school. Cool. All right. I'm like, yeah, you ain't going to do nothing. In my head, I'm thinking that. But then it's like 12 o'clock, eating lunch, not really thinking about it. I see her. She's giving me the stink eye, looking at me like, yeah, giving me this look. And I'm like, oh, this sucks. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. kind of a little bit sweating it, but not thinking it's really going to happen. Come outside the school, doors close, and it's like a scene from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or something like that. Like there's a whole throng of all these people, and I can't break out past them. And there she is at the end of it. And now I have to go that way to get home. And she starts chasing me around like a chicken, and it wasn't cool. Like how you know, you ever watch Urkel?
Yeah.
Okay, I look like Urkel back in the day because my dad wasn't hooking me up. I look like Urkel back in the day. Dad's not hooking me up, and now I'm getting chased around by this girl who wants to kick my ass. Somehow, punch through. She's chasing me. I run all the way home, and then I come home, and my dad he sees me, and he sees me. I'm all out of breath, and I'm all agitated, and this and that. He's like, "What wrong with you? What you come home like that for?" You know what I mean, like in the West Indian thing. And I'm like, "Daddy, I can't go to school and get beat up by girls. You had to take me to go and take some martial arts." So I had to go and learn some martial arts. And where did we go? We went to go and learn. I went to go and learn Taekwondo. And that was the first thing that I did. And that started me on my martial arts journey because this girl tried to kick my ass and it was very embarrassing. Didn't want that to happen anymore ever again. And I think I used that as the dynamic force to help me become who I was partially, definitely partially.
So you described yourself. Describe her.
There's a word, jocularity. Jocularity. She was seething with jocularity. She was like one of these girls who's like, okay, you know those girls that play softball and they're pretty tough? She's like a softball girl, like super hard, not necessarily fat, but like solid. Like, yeah, she'd give anybody a problem. That was her.
Do you
Scary.
remember what she wanted to fight you over?
She just didn't like my face. She didn't like my glasses. She didn't like my clothes. Yo, I used to wear high water jeans, and I used to have these things. I forget what they
Pull
were
up your
called.
shoes.
Oh, bro, my shoes. Like I had Keds jeans that were like super high waters. I had like, oh, there was Sears and Roebuck's jeans. Them things you could light matches off of them. They were not good. Like everybody else had like Levi's jackets, Metallica patches on their jackets, and I didn't have any of that. I didn't know what Metallica was back in the. I mean, I heard of it because I see all these kids, with Metallica and whatever on their jacket. No, man, as they say, I was whack back in the day as a kid. I was not good. Definitely not good. My dad was not hooking it up.
So, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
My older sister used to live with me, and I credit my older sister with saving my life many times because when I would come home and I would be getting yelled at, she was like the lawyer and the negotiator in the house, and she would like challenge my dad and be like, "Well, why are you beating him? Or why are you doing this? Or why are you yelling at him?" And she stood up for me a lot. So I got to give credit to my older sister Adele. She saved me many times, and if I didn't have her there in the house, it would have been probably a lot harder than how it ended up being. And it really sucked when she went away to go to college. But she went away just because she wanted to get away from the house. She
Right.
went to Barnard and she lived in New York City. And it's funny because like I used to beg her to come back home. She's like, "I'm not coming back home. I don't want to see that anymore." So it's like, okay, now I got to start making a decision about what I want to do. Do I want to stay here in this for the rest of my life, or what am I going to do? And that ended up being me just switching gears and trying to figure out what my life was going to end up being.
So, what are your thoughts on your dad back then and now?
You can always hold or harbor bad feelings for the way you were raised or for the things that your parents did or what they didn't do. But what I think it did was, for me, it definitely helped develop grit. It definitely helped develop the ability to be able to deal with pressures. It definitely helped with me to be able to deal with hardship because getting your ass kicked, and it's like, this is if the way that I was raised, if we took that time period and put it to this modern day right now, my dad would have lost the kids. You know what I mean? It's like, that would have been serious abuse. I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about as well.
100%.
It would have been, he would have lost the kid. Like, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try and like get in a contest with you. Like, oh yeah, well, did you get this? I'm not going to do that. But I mean, but you know what I mean? Like, I got
100%.
I didn't get the belt. I used to get the buckle. You know what I mean? It was bad. Like my dad would be like, "Stay right there," and be like, "You want me to stay here and let you beat me? No, that's not happening." I'm gonna tell you a story. I one time My dad was pissed off about something. I don't know what it was. But now remember, this is me after doing about 2 years of Taekwondo. So I'm thinking I'm cool, whatever. My dad comes at me and it's just instantaneous. Wow! I sidekick him in the chest. My dad, I sidekick him in the, I don't know what came out of me, but like he flinched like he was going to hit me. And I sidekick him in the chest. And I realized once my foot touched his body, I was like, yo, I'm dead. I'm going to die. We lived in these apartments where you had these steps that you had to climb up and then it would open up into the house, right? So you come from outside, go through the little door, the little vestibule, you open our house door, walk up the steps, you step into our apartment. I realized I kicked my dad in the chest. I'm like, yo, I'm about to die. I run and I knew he was going to chase me and I jumped over the handrail and landed on the bottom of the steps. I knew he wasn't going to jump after me. He was going
God.
to take the steps. And then I jetted to my friend Frankie's house. His mom was a stripper and I was in love with his mom. And I ran to his house and I was like, yo, Frankie, you have to let me come into the house. My dad is about to kill me. His mom's name was Fran, right? Frankie lets me into the house. My dad comes tearing because he knows I'm going to go to Frankie's house because Frankie, his mom was Italian and she was a stripper. I thought she was hot, whatever. She used to wear wigs and stuff. I go to the house, knock on the door. She lets me in. My dad comes and he's trying to break into her house. And she was like, got straight up New Jersey Italian on him, like, no, you ain't coming in at my house, blah, blah, blah. Get out of here. And then I had to call my house to negotiate with my sister, allow me to come back home with my dad. And she's like, says, yeah, 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 everything is good. You good? I came back home. He beat my ass so bad. It was terrible. It was the worst thing ever. But that was the time when I was like, okay, that was I kicked my dad, and I was like, I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but I think now it might give him a little pause if he decides he wants to hit me again. But I'm a West Indian kid. You're not supposed to hit your parents. You're supposed to just take it. You're not supposed to allow that to happen. And I think at that point in time, that was just about when I was about to graduate from high school, and it was like, oh yeah, this is. I better be careful doing anything like that again in the house. So to kind of finish up with the rest of that question, yeah, it gave me a lot of like grit. It gave me the ability to be able to deal with a lot of pressure. And it just gave me, you know, lessons of what not to do. I don't harbor any bad or ill will towards my dad. If anything, I appreciate him giving me those challenges because I feel that I'm better for it having had those challenges. If I didn't have those challenges, I think it would have been a little bit more, let's say, freestyle. I think there was a little bit of structure in knowing that I'm going to get my ass kicked if I don't do X, if I don't conform to X. And once I figured out what the template was supposed to be, I kind of was able to like do what I wanted to after that time where I kicked him in the chest. There wasn't really so much time where he was like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna beat my ass." He was. Then it wasn't so much about him beating my ass. Then now it was taking liberties away from me. I was like, okay, so learned how to play the game. But yeah, I take a lot of good things away from it. But at the same time, you always wish as a kid that you had that storybook romance life with your dad that like, hey, let's go and work on the car together, or hey, let's go get ice cream or go watch the movies. There was plenty of those times, but I feel that the times of getting my ass kicked by my dad totally outweighed all the good times that I ever had.
So I'm guessing you were a little more sure of yourself when you kicked him in the chest. How are the fights going then? When you're at school, are you handling your business now?
It's funny. After the woman who will remain unnamed, after getting chased around and beat up by her, I didn't really get that much. But it wasn't because guys knew that I was doing martial arts. People didn't really know that I was doing martial arts. And then in the senior year of high school, I get this crazy harebrained idea. I'm going to join the wrestling team. This stupid, dumbest thing ever to do. Why would I go as a kid who's never wrestled before in his life to go and join the wrestling team with kids that have been doing it since they're like 7, 8 years old? I go in. I remember the coach was like, "Hey, here's your singlet," and I'm like, "Coach, I don't know anything about this." And at that time, I remember So these are reading glasses. I don't necessarily need them. I kind of like them because they make me look studious. Clark Kent action right here. But I remember I go to the wrestling room. I'm like, coach, I never wrestled or anything like that before. All right, cool. Go over there and go train with so and so. And those squeaky toys that dogs have. This guy hits me with a blast double, picks me up and pile drives me into the ground, and I make that noise, like this weird noise, and everyone in the wrestling mat stopped. The coach was like, beep, 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 blows the whistle. Like, what the hell was that? And then I'm like, hee, like laughing, like nervously. And everyone just laughs at me. And that was how that was known. I was like the guy, the squeaky toy guy, when you're going to be wrestling with him. And I tried to never let that happen anymore. And I think that gave me a little bit more like, okay, I can't ever let that happen. That noise was embarrassing. I can't make that noise ever again. So, yeah.
So you would have been right around the right age. Do you remember the movie Vision Quest?
Of course I do. That was an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Too bad I wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Too bad I wasn't that good.
Yeah. So you grow up, and I'm guessing with you saying your dad didn't hook you up and stuff, I'm guessing you don't have a lot of money growing up.
Well, it depends on what you consider a lot of money. Having a roof over your head, having the essentials at the house to eat, running water, electricity, a television with like 7 channels. Yeah, that back in the day, we didn't even have like the cable box with the buttons that you press. We didn't even have the cable box. You had to turn the TV with the rabbit ear antennas and all that stuff. Maybe you get like the B movies late at night if you hit the antennas right. But we didn't really have any of that. So, and my dad was very adamant, like, oh, you want money, you got to go out and make your own money. So I went out and started working. I was like assistant sous chef in a hotel. I worked selling skateboards out of a skateboard shop in Woodbridge Mall when I was living there. I worked in the summers mowing lawns for this professor at Rutgers University. And those were all different times. Oh, and then there was a restaurant called Roy Rogers back in the day. I worked at Roy Rogers doing the fries. That was the worst job ever. I would never, you know what? There's people that want to work in fast food restaurants. I would never work in a fast food restaurant ever again. The only reason why I would never work in a fast food restaurant again was I hated coming back home with these crazy slippery ass feet from the shoes, stepping in the grease the whole time. That was the worst thing for me. I hated that. I hated every day slipping around. You got you have that yellow side, the piso mojado sign, like, hey, this is slippery. Don't slip over here. I hated that. I hated that so bad. So
I worked at a couple of those too growing up, and what I hated was the smell, because after you work there for so long, you start to smell like the place, you know, no matter what. So let's move into you getting some more kind of adult jobs. Once again, like I said at the very beginning, none of your stuff in your story ever seems to connect. But then when you look at it on the backside as a whole picture, it does. You became a model back in the day.
Yeah.
And I mean, but you just talked about never having the nice clothes, having the kids and stuff. And then when you become a model, you work for some of the biggest names in the fashion industry.
Yeah, I did. It was a great time. So how that works is I'm a bike messenger in New York City, right? And winter, spring, summer, fall, riding a bike. And all the bike messengers would all go after work. They would go to this place in New York City called Washington Square Park. And everybody would go there. It was at the end of Fifth Avenue. And that was kind of like the destination for everybody. People are like listening to music. People are people watching. Guys are selling weed. Guys are playing chess. People throwing frisbees, the whole 9 yards. The Calypso tumblers are doing their show. And all the bike messengers used to get around and congregate with each other. And one day I'm there, and this guy named Douglas comes and he's like, hey, you have an interesting look. And I'm like, uh-oh, is this guy trying to pick me up? And, you're thinking about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. I'm trying to be like the New Yorker, like, all right, keep back, distance. But then I'm listening to him. He's like, hey, I'm, a fashion designer. I do fashion shows. Would you be interested in being a model in one of the shows that I'm going to be doing. I said, you know what? Okay. So I went and I did the show. And then he was like, hey, I know a person who's a booker at this agency. I'm going to send you to go see this booker at this agency. The agency ends up being in London. He calls that person. That person's like, oh, yeah, send the guy over. Send me over to England. And they were like, oh, yeah, cool. They take me into their agency. The following year, a friend of mine was like, hey, we're going to do this photo shoot. You want to go and do this photo shoot? This guy named Shady. And Shady introduces me to this guy, Randall Mesden, who's a photographer. That time he was like one of the biggest photographers in the world. And then I ended up doing like this campaign called Chevignon, and then Wrangler and Levi's and all these different things, and Benetton. I did all these different things, which was cool. And then I started developing a little bit of portfolio, and I got another agency in New York. And then that just catapulted everything. I did like all the different magazines like Details and Men's Journal and all this other things. And then I ended up finally starting to get like clients. And my biggest client that I had was Tommy Hilfiger, but I also had Hugo Boss. I had Levi's Dockers. I had, who else? Wranglers. I had so many different ones. And then I did all the men's shows in Italy, in Paris, in New York, in London. So I was traveling all over the world doing that. But at the same time, it's one of those things like you just said, like I didn't grow up with all the cool clothing. And here I am. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna come and do the men's shows, finish do the men's shows. What's a young kid, goes out and does this fashion show, come back home with like 10 grand. You're like, oh snap, that's cool. I want to do a little bit more of that. At that time, I'm still a martial artist. So that helped me be able to be like, still support the life that I liked and I wanted to do. So I did the modeling. I really went all in on the modeling, but at the same time, I was like a club promoter, party promoter in New York City, running the door at a lot of clubs, doing security at a bunch of different clubs. I was a assistant office building manager. I was a welder's assistant, busboy, barback in big clubs in New York City. So I was doing so many different things, but the modeling was one of those things where it was like, okay, I don't need to necessarily do all of that stuff because I'm getting all of this work all the time. I got all of that work and it allowed me to go and train. And that's how kind of started catapulting more my martial arts career. So,
Is that the first time that you see real money?
bro, yeah, absolutely.
How old are you when all this is happening?
So imagine this is probably like 25, 26, maybe. I'm starting to see like real money. You know, oh, this was such the thing for me. So did terrible in school. My dad was like, well, if you're not gonna do well in school, like I did like a year and a half of college and I dropped out. And that's when I became a bike messenger. My dad was like, well, you can't stay at home. More of West Indian upbringing. He's like, you can't stay at home anymore. You either have to get out or you got to go back to college. And I was like, well, I'm not going back to college. So this is where I start making my man life, right? And I remember I was terrible in school. My sister left where we lived, and she had this math teacher, Mr. Attardi. I'll never forget this guy. And I was terrible in his class, D's, F's in his class all the time. And I remember he always was like, oh, your sister, she was so great in school. And I hated him because he used to have like these penny loafers with no socks. He would come in with his chinos, and he would come in with his pastel colored polo shirts and his glasses, slicked back hair. And I hated that guy so much. And I remember I had just done this Tommy Hilfiger campaign, worldwide campaign. I've got billboards in Times Square, billboards at the train station in Edison, New Jersey, like in the hometown where I used to live. I'm in every single magazine. There's TV commercials. I did a cologne for Dolce and Gabbana. I did all these different things, and it's all running. And I remember I had like over 100 grand. This is back in the early 90s. I had over 100 grand as a young kid in my bank account. So I'm like, I'm rich. I could do whatever I want. And I remember I came back home, and I guess I kind of went back to be like, he kind of basically said to me in no uncertain terms that I was never going to amount to anything and I wasn't going to do anything. And I was like, hey, Mr. Attardi, how you doing? Check out what I did. Did you see my billboard at the train station? Or, did you see the TV commercial? And people had in the class, I came into the class and he asked me to talk, and I felt like a dumbass because it's like, what am I really going to tell these people? You know what I mean? Like, I got lucky to be a model, and I sucked in Mr. Attardi's class in math, but here I am, and I'm paid now. But it was kind of fun to go back and kind of like do that and gloat a little bit. But at that time, when you're a young kid and you don't really have direction, you that 100 grand that I had in the bank, I was like, yo, I'm never gonna make money ever again. I need to save every penny of this. I need to figure out. I was super frugal. Like I was not one of those models that like, had like crazy model girlfriends or any of that type of stuff. Modeling was a job. And I was like, yo, I'm trying to be really good at this job. I'm trying to make a lot of money. And then when I need to, I'm gonna take a break and I'm gonna go and train. And that's exactly what I treated it as something, a vehicle for me to be able to go and do other things.
You think you missed out by doing that?
Hell no. Missed out on doing drugs? Nah,
No.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I mean, model girls, cool, awesome, but realistically, unless they were healthy and into sports or were adventure, yeah, I guess you could say that models are fairly adventurous because they get to go to all these different beautiful places.
Right.
But some of them are really lazy and all they want to do is do drugs, and then they became, or a lot of them are super vain and they're just really only into I can't, I have to have my Evian bottle. I'm not all about. I will drink tap water. I'm gonna go and rough it and sleep out in the bush. I don't need all of that. Like that thing is cool. I can do the blue steel look if that's what you need me to do, but I don't need that. Like that, I was like, it was a job. I didn't like model girls. Didn't want to be around model girls and didn't want to smoke. Hated all those people smoking around me. I was like, yo, you're killing my vibe right now. You're killing my lungs. I gotta go train later and I don't want to smell like, or I don't want to taste your cigarette smoke in my lungs. And I never did any drugs. Never. I was like a super straight edge kid. I didn't even tell you. Like I used to be going to, CBGBs. Or you ever heard of
Hmm.
CBGBs? I lived in CBGBs for like years. I used to go to the punk rock shows all the time. I had the craziest life. I cannot complain about what I was able to do, and all of these things helped shape, I think, who I am today now.
Well, because I was going to ask you when I asked you, do you think you missed out? Not necessarily did you miss out on the drugs and stuff. Do you think that you didn't take full advantage of being a model, being famous like that by, I don't know, by getting quote unquote the VIP treatment? You live in Manhattan at the time, correct?
Yeah.
Where are you living in Manhattan?
So I lived in a really awesome place. I lived on LaGuardia Place between Bleecker and Houston. So if you know where Soho is,
Okay.
okay, so Soho was just right across Houston Street from where I lived. From my house, I was 3 blocks from NYU, 3 blocks from Washington Square Park, 1 block from Soho. I lived right in the epicenter of almost downtown. Not necessarily Soho, but just a little bit north of Soho. I lived in the epicenter. The Blue Note was right around the corner from me. I had every restaurant that I wanted to go to. Every train was right around where I wanted to go. Broadway's just a couple blocks away. Soho's literally right there. From my fire escape where I looked, I could see at that time the World Trade Center from my house in the nighttime. And we used to be, as young kids, we used to be bad. Like, these hot like tourist girls would be coming from all these different countries, and you'd be seeing them on my block. My block was hot. It was like one of those places that you walk down my block, and we come out there and we sit out there with our lawn chairs, and we'd be like cheering the girls that come by, holding up placards like 2 to 10, and like if a girl got a 2, she better get off the block. 10, yes, stay. We're like, yay, standing up, giving ovations. We did all that stupid stuff. It was fun living in New York, man. But I lived in New York City. Rent was mad cheap at that time. My friend Hugh and my other friend Bill and Sierra, we were living with his parents. They were like beatniks from back in the day. They had this beautiful loft, 2,000 square foot loft in prime real estate in, just north of Soho on one of the best and hottest blocks in the city. It was like, and I was able to help, when they didn't have the money to pay the rent. I was able to pay the rent like for months, which was cool. It was awesome to be able to live there and do that, and all of that was off of the modeling money. The modeling money allowed me to do so much. If I took advantage of it, I started getting a little bit tired of it, actually. The modeling was cool. You know, there was another guy named Tyson Beckford who was the Ralph Lauren model. And you know, at one point in time, I was a little bit jealous of him, but he was stuck in one contract. Yeah, he was making a lot of money, but he was stuck in one contract. And I had the versatility and the ability to be able to work with whoever it was that I wanted to. So I saw maybe that there could be advantage with that, but you know, it would have been nice to get $1 million contract. But you know, it allowed me to move around and do so many different things. You know, and I think I prefer that as opposed to being locked into something. And I think that kind of goes with how my life has been. It's all about the learning experience and the adventure and travel. I don't want to necessarily be locked in like, you know, somebody who's working in a cubicle all day long. I don't want to be that person. And I think my life has just been one continuous chain like that, where it's like, yeah, I get to do what it is I want, when I want, how I want. And I think the modeling helped propel that and set things up like that for me.
Well, and I think we should point out at that time when you were modeling, you and I had talked before, and you said you were doing the modeling so that you could pay for your trips to Thailand to fight
Yeah.
and stay there. So let's talk about, because once again, two things that don't connect at all.
Yeah.
You're doing one to do the other, and they have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. It's funny because absolutely nothing to do with each other. And my booker hated it when I was like, hey, I'm gonna be out. I'm going to go to Thailand. Oh, really? How long are you going to go to Thailand? I'm going to be gone for like 3 months. He's like, but what about this job? I'm like, what about it? I was like, if they want me to come back, I'll be able to come back and do it later. But yeah, but that job's not going to be there. I was like, you know what, man? I gotta have some time off for me. I gotta do AJ things. And the modeling is kind of funny. It's like, okay, I'm doing Thai boxing. I'm going to Thailand and go train, you know, fighting in Thailand and doing the stuff in Thailand. It's like, is that like counterintuitive to you being a model, getting punched in the face, maybe elbowed and kneed in the face? Isn't that counterintuitive? But for me, it just allowed me to have freedom. I love doing it, and you know, I'm glad I had the opportunity to do both. And fortunately for me, I didn't get beat up too much. I was able to go to Thailand, have really great experiences, come back, and it's cool because at that time there was no Thai boxing in America. Like there literally no Thai boxing in America at that time. I helped develop and start the first Thai boxing school with this other guy, John Phil Nurse. We and another guy named Nestor Marte. We helped develop the first Thai boxing school in New York City, and it was great to be able to go. But I had to go to Thailand. I had to continue to go because if he wasn't there teaching, because he was from England, he had his own school. So me and that guy Nestor, we started teaching just from off of our experience. And then he was like, you know, we're worried like every week, like, oh, it's going to be like, you know, the Karate Kid. Somebody's going to come into the school and try and beat us up. With what little experience that we had at that time at Thai boxing, you couldn't do that. It wasn't sustainable at that time. So that's why I had to keep going back. Yes, when he finally decided to come and stay in America, great. But I kept going back just to level up over now the students in the school because they're getting everything that we're learning, but you still have to be able to level up and stay above the you know, everybody else that's in the school. So traveling over there and doing that, the modeling helped support me being able to stay in Thailand months and months and months at a time. It was great. And again, it just added to the adventure. You know, imagine I go to Thailand and I'll always remember being able to go there the first time. I had a great friend, Malani, and her mom's cousin was a colonel in the Thai army who owned his own Thai boxing gym. And so what a great deal. I had the hookup of the century to be able to go and train in a Thai boxing camp for free, super small, like maybe 7 to 10 fighters in the school at that time. The guys were all good. And the best part about it is I'm the only black guy in a 30-mile square radius. So I go there and you know, it's again talking about learning, developing more grit and being able to deal with things that you're not used to and being able to deal in uncomfortable pressures when you're walking around in Thailand in a city where there's no other black dudes. There's a black dude like over there, like some African guy selling like some kind of thing. Yeah, but that's not like the guy I can sit there and have a conversation with. And when you're walking and everything is like, hey, Mike Tyson, Charles Barkley, Chocolate Man, you know what I mean? These are like funny things. But at that time, when you're a young kid, you're like, yo, why are you calling me Chocolate Man? You know what I mean? but it's because they don't see black people. So it was like, it was fun to be able to go there. And then like, I really got into the whole Thai culture and just the whole idea of being in Thailand. I started to learn the language. I started to learn how to read and write. I was watching TV. I started picking up the magazines and recognizing some of the characters and seeing your favorite fighters in the magazines and everything. So the whole Thailand experience was like amazing for me. I loved it. And, going from that, 92 I went, 94 I went, 96, 97, 98 I went, and I trained. All of that was all paid for by, doing the modeling. And that all started off with my friend Malani and the colonel in the Thai army. You know what I mean? If I didn't have that, I don't know what my Thai experience would be. Considering how it is right now, you can't go there and get free experiences right now. Everything, it's a transaction right now. You're a foreigner who wants to come and train in Thailand. It ain't the same as how it used to be. It used to be super cheap. It's still cheap, right? Cheap-ish right now. But I mean, like, I had a very unique experience. I didn't pay for any of my training when I was over there, and I got quality training, which was great.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. Are you kind of behind the power curve? I know you've been doing martial arts for quite a while, but you're going against guys that have been doing it since they were babies. So how was the experience of starting over there? When I've got to believe that when you get over there, you think you can handle yourself, you know what you're doing because you've been doing it for a while. Is it a different outcome than you thought?
I'll liken it to this experience. Being it's like being a white belt in jiu-jitsu, and you go and you have to go against Andre Galvao or Professor John Danaher, if you know who these people are, or Marcelo Garcia or Renzo Gracie or any one of these guys. You go there and you just get your ass kicked, you get humiliated, and it's like that every single day, twice a day for 3 months. That's a very humbling experience. But what you gain from that, though, even though you're getting your ass kicked, one, you get used to the adversity of it. Two, you get used to how hot it is and how hard the training is and the training regiments is. So now that's building that character in your head, that indomitable spirit. It's building your ability to be able to handle any pressure from anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And then when you come home and you've been getting your ass kicked for 3 months, 100%. Anyone else who's not those people, they're getting trashed. And so coming back to school and coming back to the gym and training with people, it was easy. It was easy to come back. And again, we're talking about at a time where Thai boxing was not big. It was all super grassroots at that time. So coming back home after training in Thailand, that was like the secret sauce. You needed to go do that if you wanted to level up. You could level up if you trained for a long time, but it was kind of like one of those Pac-Man power-ups when you went over there. You're leveling up immediately. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and you're right. I was in Hawaii in '98. I was stationed over there, and it was just starting to get kind of popular over there. The no holds barred fighting and all that kind of stuff. And I think over there at the time it was Gracie that was the big name in Hawaii.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I understand what you mean. And you're making all that money from modeling. You're not making, you and I talked, you're not making a lot of money fighting. And there's really no way that you can. Also, you're getting older in
Yeah.
this fight game. And we talked about expiration dates. Can we talk a little bit about that, about you having to kind of see everything that's happening, see how your world's changing, and what kind of you had to decide on?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a rough one, So I had probably a lot of self-induced pressure because here I am a John Phil Nurse's, one of his first students in America, myself and this other guy, Nestor, first students in America. I don't want to necessarily take credit and say I was the standard bearer of the school, but I was one of the lead instructors under him. So there was a lot of pressure to always perform. That I think it was self-induced pressure to always perform, to always be the guy who everyone else was aspiring to be like in the gym. And then I'm fighting and I'm doing well. And I remember it's 1997. Coincidentally, I'm in Italy doing the men's fashion shows in Italy and then doing some modeling work in Italy. I'm away from the school and I get a call from my professor. This is just after Princess Diana had died, right? She died in a car crash. And I remember I get that phone call from him. Hey, I got this fight for you. You got to come back home. All right, cool. I finished doing everything that I was doing. I had, at that point, I was like going to the mountains and snowboarding up in the Italian Alps. And I come back home, get my stuff, pack up, come back home. He talks to me. He's like, all right, now I need you to get on a plane and I need you to go to England. I'm like, all right, I'm going to England. That's where my training camp was going to be. And it's winter in England and it's freezing. So I was going to fight. And he didn't really give me much specifics, but this was going to be a title fight. It was going to be the national title fight. And I had to lose weight for this fight. I'm like, okay, cool. I used to fight at middleweight, 160 to 165. Now, this is 1997. So I was already in 86. I'm 18. In 96, I'm what? 26. Wait, yeah, 96. I'm 26. So it's already, I'm old now in the Thai boxing game, if you will. 97, I'm getting ready to fight. I'm going to be 27. I'm getting ready to fight in the Thai boxing game. No, it was more than that. Because in 98 is when I put in my package for American citizenship. Yeah, so I'm already like almost 30. I'm like 29. And I go over to England. He tells me I got this fight that's lined up. All right, cool. What do I have to do? You have to lose 23 pounds in 20 days. Oh my God. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'd never fought that weight before. I fought 160 to 165. For this fight, I used to always walk around like 172. I had to drop from that to 153 pounds. That was the most severe weight cut I've ever done in my life. And I'm in England. It's freezing. The first 3 days, I lose 14 pounds and I plateau and I can't lose another pound. I'm completely spent, have no energy. And it was miserable to do that. I go and I get into this fight. It's with this guy named Alex Gong, rest in peace. Alex Gong they used to call him the F-16. So his kicks were really fast. He was a great champion. He was a national champion, fought in Thailand, fought in America. And now I'm testing myself against Alex Gong. Great fight. First round, he almost knocks me out. I come back, almost knock him out in the first round. Second round, I won. Third round, I won. Fourth round is a draw. Fifth round, now, and I didn't tell you, after I finally made the weight, I had to fly back home that night to fight the next morning. Wasn't allowed to eat because I had made the weight in England. Wasn't allowed to eat. Slept in a hotel. Didn't even go back to my house because I didn't want the temptation of not being able to sleep. And I didn't want the temptation of drinking water or eating food. So I completely starved myself. And I have to wait until the afternoon and I have to drive out to go do the weigh-in. So I wasn't allowed to eat anything or do anything. Finally get the weigh-in done, eating food, and eat a little bit. And I'm now dealing with jet lag, nerves, and of course, obviously, I'm completely emaciated. Like I'm looking like Skeletor, completely emaciated. Fight starts, I tell you everything that happens. Last minute of the fifth round, I lose TKO to leg kicks. And this is an accumulation of so many different things. I'm not going to take anything away from Alex Gong. Alex Gong, great champion, rest in peace, like I said. But when you have those different types of constraints put against you, and then now you're supposed to fight, and especially just jumping off of a plane and not reacclimating myself and getting my weight back on pace again, that sucked, right? And we asked for a rematch. Yeah, we'll do the rematch. 6 months, nothing. 8 months, nothing. A year, nothing. I'm spiraling in depression. I go and have some more fights. Heart's not in it anymore because it's not really feeling like one. I feel like I let not only the school down and my teacher down, but I failed in doing what I wanted to do so badly, was become a champion. I wasn't able to become this champion, and it was hard. It was hard to be able to deal with that. And then I'm like starting to look at logistics and I'm starting to look at things and I'm like, is this realistic? Am I going to be able to do this forever? Why am I still doing this? So I'm like, all right, we got to pivot. We got to do something else. 98, I put in my package for citizenship. In the process of doing my package for citizenship, the reason why I put it in was because I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to become a New York City fireman. At that time, and I didn't realize this is a federal job. I'm like, oh, fireman, what's the big deal? Denied my package because I wasn't an American citizen. I didn't know you needed a clearance to become a fireman. I'm like, yo, take a hose, spray it on the fire. What's how difficult could that be? They denied my package. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna leave America. I'm gonna go on another adventure. I'm gonna leave because I'm a Commonwealth status citizen. I'm gonna go to England. I'm gonna try and see if I could join the British Parachute Regiment. And from the British Parachute Regiment, I'm going to maybe try and see if I can go to selection for SAS or SBS. At that time, I'd read every book on the British SAS, and I knew, I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm going to go. And then I had a little bit of pause where I was like, well, I mean, that sounds like a really awesome adventure that you could go do. But what happens if you fail? And I think a lot of that started, I started thinking about everything again, just because of what happened with that fight. And I'm like, what happens if you go over there and you fail? And now this is the second time you failed at something. Now you're going to be stuck in England. Not to say that that could be a terrible thing, but life would have been a completely different thing. I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't be talking with you right now, probably, if I was. Doesn't necessarily mean that I would have made it into the SAS or SBS, but life would have been a different story. Could I have done it? Yeah, 100%. No problem. I have family in England. I could go over there and stay. But I'm like, why would I go over there and go do that when everything that you've done, everything you've made, all your success that you've had here in this country gave you everything. Why would you go and do that? Why don't you go and investigate what this country has to offer? I mean, the SAS is amazing. The SBS are amazing. The British Parachute Regiment, amazing. Why don't we see whether or not if there's something here? And then I did my research, started reading books from Richard Marchenko, and that was my thought process. Like, oh, everything in the Navy SEALs is all pirates. These guys are all like, larger than life characters, tattoos from their knuckles to their ankles. I'm like, oh yeah, great. This is cool. I love pirates. I think this is going to be awesome. The stories were amazing in the book. That's what I wanted to be. And the bigger challenge of it for me as well was didn't know how to swim. So I'm going to learn how to swim. And I think I'm going to go and join this thing. What a foolish way to decide that that's what I was going to do. But the real idea was I was doing that also in the furtherance of started getting executive protection jobs. I said, okay, I'm going to join this. If I can go and join special operations and do this, I'll get help with getting my qualifications for executive protection because I had a great mentor, a guy, and I'll always credit this guy, Jex Fontaine. This guy is like, when you look up the word Ronin in the dictionary, Jex Fontaine's picture is there. This is the guy who's constantly sharpening the steel all the time. He's like kickboxing world champion. He's a black belt or multiple time black belt or like third degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. I think same in judo. He's deadly with a stick and a knife. That guy is a 3-gun shooting champion. He used to run all the security in Miami. I wanted to be him. I thought, like I had a fun life and I thought, my life was cool. I always wanted to be Jex. And so Jex was like a great mentor. And he was like, hey, if you want to do this, if you want to get more education or whatever, you got to do this. You got to make a decision, either pay a lot of money out of pocket or go into the military. And that's how I started to make my decision about what it was that I wanted to do. And credit to him for helping me make that decision. But then I decided, yeah, okay, put in the package. But it was not an easy road to get to going into special operations for me. I had to put in my package for the citizenship, right? And then my vision, like I told you, I'm wearing readers right now. My vision was terrible. I was blind as a bat. Even though I was doing Thai boxing and everything, blind as a bat. 20/70 in this eye, 2400 in my left eye, completely blind, completely like everything was like fuzzy. And until you were like this close, everything was fuzzy, right? And so had to get PRK surgery. So I was like, okay, I'm willing to do that. Had to get letters of recommendation from senators and congressmen. Had to get letters from active duty and retired Navy SEALs, all, saying, hey, this guy is a good character reference, blah, blah, blah. I want to support this guy and his thing. in his attempt to become a Navy SEAL. Cool. Did all of that. And then I had to take this SEAL PRT or PST 13 times. I took it with this guy named Captain Bissett. He was a reserve SEAL captain. And then I also took a test with a guy named Stu Smith. And if you don't know anything, if you know anything about Navy SEALs and guys that are trying to become a Navy SEAL during the time from, let's say, 1998 until now, Stu Smith had better be in everybody's mouth, because that guy, he wrote the Bible, the 12 weeks to Bud's workout. That was the Bible for everybody. I did that workout like religiously. And then I did another screen test with him just to get another letter of recommendation from him so I can try and go and join the Navy. And without all of that, yeah, I put so much investment into it. I didn't want to mess up my chances. And remember, I got to wait 3 years for my citizenship to come in. So 1998 until 2001, I'm waiting 3 years for my citizenship to come in. So all that time, I was already physically fit, didn't know how to swim, had to learn how to swim, and then had to learn how to be able to do the SEAL PST, all the evolutions all together at one time, then get those letters of recommendation, knocking on doors. I went and going to see like senators and congressmen. That's mad intimidating to go to some senator's office and ask, hey, would you support me and give me a letter of recommendation? I need an age waiver, to go and become a Navy SEAL. Oh, wow, that's crazy. You know how to swim? No. Okay. And you want me to sign off on your paper? Okay, step. You know what I mean? And I'm sure people probably thought I wasn't going to make it in, but it gave me a lot to focus on, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to really bear down on something and decide, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I have to figure out what the steps are for me being able to make it into this.
So I guess I got to ask, because you had talked about SAS and SBS, and then you decided the Navy, even though you couldn't swim. There's so many other special operations. There's Rangers, there's Green Berets, there's Delta, there's all kinds of stuff. Why was it the Navy?
The Navy at that time had the fastest pathway to get to special operations.
Okay.
Literally, all you had to do, if you passed the SEAL at that time, if you were able to pass the pre-screener to get a SEAL challenge contract, all you had to do was pick a school, an admissible school at that time. And I picked quartermaster, the guy who would, plot the charts on, plot the course on the chart for ships. I picked that, but there were certain schools that were SEAL qualification schools that would allow you to go and cross rate to become a Navy SEAL. And I picked what I thought was one of those easier, not necessarily easier, shortest schools. I think it was like 6 weeks of a school in the Navy to learn how to, plot, the course on charts. And then I already had my paperwork that said, yes, I did, well enough on my SEAL PST. So now I have all of that together to go to the training where you join the Army. Okay, you got to do at least a minimum of 3 years, maybe going to Ranger School or whatever it is. Then you go to SF training, right? Okay, cool. You go and you make it to SF. If you make it to SF, to the Q course, possibly you make it in, maybe you don't make it in. At the Marines at that time, still you had to go become a Marine, and then they were very, they didn't really allow people to stay in special operations at that time. So Force Recon, you had to do it, and then you had to go back and rotate back into a regular Marine platoon. And if I went in, I wanted to be special operations the whole entire time. The Air Force at that time, I didn't really have enough information on it. I didn't want to be a PJ, although amazing skill set to learn. And I didn't want to be a CCT, I didn't want to be a CCT. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And then the Navy, like I said, the shortest school to, or the shortest time to be able to get into Delta, you wouldn't even be able to get into that until you did a whole career of Army, then you screen SF, then you screen, for Delta. Navy, it's like, boot camp, A school, buds. Go to buds, SQT, get to your team, go do your time at your team. If you're lucky enough, fortunate enough, you get to go to Dev Group and screen for Dev Group. Awesome. You know what I mean? But like I saw it seemed to me that there was the better consistency of being able to go into the Navy and get into a special operation program that's respected. And I thought that that was, the better idea. And obviously, like for me, for sure, the other challenge was didn't know how to swim. And here's a great opportunity for me to learn a skill set that I don't have.
So you go in, you're 33 years old when you go in.
Yes.
You've seen the world. You've fought for title championships. You've been a model. You've done all these things. You've worked at clubs. 33, you go into the Navy. You're the lowest form there is going into the Navy because you're a boot. I mean, you're brand new. How do you take everything that you had and everything that you did and use it to kind of focus on that end goal of being a SEAL?
So there's one thing I'll definitely say about that. Luckily for me, all of those different tough times that I had taught me a lot of patience. And you need patience, especially when you're used to dealing with such a high caliber of people. Like when I'm in my Thai boxing gym and we're training and we're 70% ready for fights, it didn't matter any time. If my trainer said, hey, I have a fight for you in a week, and you're able to lose the weight and be prepared and ready to be at 100% for a fight, that takes a lot of fortitude. That takes a lot of commitment to a process. And that takes a lot of you just taking beatings all the time and being able to understand, okay, this is what I need to get to where it is that I want to go. And then you get to boot camp and you have people that have never left their house before. And I'm as old as my what do they call them? My RDC, my chief. I'm as old as my chief. I'm older than his LPO. And I remember he wants to beat the brakes off of the division because they did something stupid. And you're always going to get beat down in boot camp. And I remember they used to have a thing they used to call making it rain. And they would close the doors, they would push all the racks to the walls, and they would do these PT sessions. And I was like, yes, finally, I'm going to be able to get some exercise because all the exercise that I was doing before, not doing that in boot camp. Guys could barely run a mile. Guys could barely do a couple push-ups or whatever it is. Finally, we're getting beat. The one thing that really killed me one time, he's like, oh, you think you're pretty good, huh, James? And I'm like, no, chief so-and-so, trying to be humble about it. But yeah, of course, yeah, I'm crushing all of these fools here in this boot camp division. I don't want to be with them. I want to go to Buds.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, all right, well, I got this thing. It's going to be terrible for you. And he's like, all right, everybody, noses against your rack. I'm like, what? So we had to stand at attention with our noses against our rack. You want to talk about, for me, that was like the most demeaning form of punishment. I was so mad, like seething mad, that now, because some dumbass didn't know how to fold his underwear right, I got to stand with my nose against my rack. And we're going to be standing there for hours. Guys are fainting. Guys are falling out. I'm looking at these people like incredulously, like, yo, are you serious? You're just standing, you're not even exercising, you're falling out, and you're making us stay here longer because you're being a jackass and falling down and crying. Please quit already. Go, leave. And I was so mad. I remember my chief came up and he was like, what do you think of that, James? And I was like, permission to speak freely. He's like, yeah. I was like, this is fucking stupid. I told him straight. He like had to keep his composure. Pardon my French. I don't really curse that much. He's like, he had to keep his composure. Him and his LPO like just turned away and walked away. And I would love to know like what those guys were thinking or saying. This old guy, as old as them, is there in boot camp with these like 18, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids and, being forced to do this stupid menial task. And guys are crying about it. And it was like, I was like, yo, I can't deal with this right now. I really don't want to deal with this. I so wanted to get out of that. But that definitely gave me a lot of what not to do, like how not to be. I never wanted to be that guy. Like when we were in Buds, I didn't want to be that guy that was crying or complaining or doing whatever. I was like, no way I'm going to do that, and I tapped back into all my experiences from the past, especially the Thai boxing. And then oddly enough, you want to know what really helped me a lot? And I think a lot of people kind of caught on to it a little bit later. Going in older, what really helped me a lot was yoga. Yoga really helped me a ton, especially in Hell Week. The first Hell Week I did 2 Hell Weeks. First Hell Week I got SIPE and I got rolled out of my buds class. I started with class 239 and I got rolled out of that Hell Week for SIPE, right? Second Hell Week was in class 240. And I credit, there is a breathing technique. It's called Ujjayi breath. And it's, you breathe in a certain way forcefully as to where it helps you develop body heat. And if I didn't have that understanding of that technique and just being able to be in the moment and not think about like, oh, this really sucks. If something was wrong with me, yeah, I'm not afraid to speak my mind and tell them, hey, I got to go see the corpsman or whatever. But that's one of those things. Nobody ever wanted to go see the corpsman because, you feel like you're one step away from being kicked out of the program. But that definitely gave me a lot of ability to be able to handle pressure, breathe through the stress, breathe through all of the things that were hurting me, and be able to like focus. Okay, only got to make it to lunch. Only got to make it through this next evolution. Only got to make it until tonight. And Buds is cool because it's like a 9 to 5 job essentially, except you start at like 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning rather. But like nighttime, after, unless there was night evolutions, the day was yours. You know what I mean? So I actually liked it. I thought it was actually cool. It was like, this is my office job. This is my office. The ocean, the obstacle course, the sand, getting beat down on the Buds grinder. That I love that office, But I think all my experiences that I had before that helped shape and allowed me to be able to do what it was that I was able to do and focus really well on all those tasks. If I didn't have that experience, who knows where we would have been right now, if I would have even have made it through. I think going in older allowed me to have a little bit of better preparation mentally, where a lot of other guys coming into the program didn't have that same type of mental preparation. Like guys didn't, unless you were like, wrestlers, guys that were like D1 wrestlers or whatever, or water polo players. Those people, yeah, definitely, they've dealt with a lot of mental anguish and stuff like that. But the other guys that are coming in, a lot of those guys ended up being like cannon fodder and got kicked out real quick.
How many people knew about your past?
It's going through training, eventually things start kind of slipping out a little bit. But it was funny. It wasn't one of those things really, really talked about, except for maybe a little bit about the martial arts type stuff, the Thai boxing. But, the whole model thing, guys, I think I told a couple guys, but it wasn't one of those things like it would, like my call sign or my nickname wasn't Zoolander or anything like that. Although, people used to, after I graduated from Buds, whatever, at the team, people would, pick up pictures and would like have my face, pasted on, what's the name? Ben Stiller's doing the blue steel look. And I wasn't doing the blue steel, but it's like Ben Stiller doing his poses and guys would like be posting up my face on his picture and stuff. I thought that was hilarious. I thought it was a little bit funny. But then one day, my first platoon, we're out training. I think we were in Memphis, Tennessee or something like that. And we're at a bar, and I always would be the designated driver just because my first platoon that I was in, it was full of Liberty Risk guys. And this was the break glass, in case of war platoon. Everybody was, exactly what I read in the Richard Marchenko books. That's what I had in the platoon. And I remember we're there, and everyone was like, hey, is that you? And it's that fight that I had on ESPN2 with this guy, Alex Gong. And they didn't realize, like they thought like, they heard that I did martial arts or whatever. And then they see me fighting on the TV. And that kind of changed perspectives of people a little bit afterwards. They're like, oh, maybe don't mess with him, which was kind of cool. Which was kind of cool a little bit. So
The one thing you did struggle with when we talked about it yesterday was the swimming.
yeah.
Was there ever a point or a time when you're underwater where you seriously considered like, yeah, this is not for me?
100%. So getting ready, being able to pass the 500 meter swim, learning how to do that. Like, I mean, going from this to being able to plane out in the water. Even now, I'm not the greatest swimmer. I never was the greatest swimmer. And yeah, we have Olympic champions, Olympic swimmer, Olympic level swimmer, D1 national level swimmers, and everything like that. Me, not so much. Not going to be a D1 swimmer. Never going to get those times. The guy that helped me, who helped me get ready for Buds, was on the Russian national swimming team. This was my guy who did everything with me in terms of preparing me to get ready. But we didn't know about drown proofing, and we didn't have a pool for drown proofing. So I remember everything is going well, doing all the swimming, passing all the swimming evolutions. They tie my hands up, they tie my feet up. They're like, all right, enter the water. And I enter the water. And, I'm not gonna forward the misnomer that, black people all sink, but black people all sink in the water. But we had some white guys who were the same, some white dudes who sink because of muscle density, right? But for sure, the chocolate guys are sinking to the bottom. And I remember I get in the pool and touch the bottom, come up, and then they're like, okay, float. And so I'm doing the kick. And, theoretically, the kick is supposed to propel you up in the water and get you to the surface so you can get a little bit of air. When you're getting your air, your body's going to sink down a little bit, and then you're going to kick yourself back up. And when I'm doing my kick, it's basically I'm scooping myself lower and lower and lower and lower. And I start drowning and I almost panic. And now your hands are tied and your feet are tied and you can't break anything. And I had this guy, he was a master chief at this time, Johnny Hoffman. Johnny Hoffman, uh, awesome man. He was on the parachute team, came in, he frapped in, broke his whole entire lower posterior chain, everything broken. And so he's crutching around on crutches. After he frapped in, he came in and he was our Buds proctor when I checked into Buds. And I'm basically drowning myself. And Johnny Hoffman comes in and he sees me going down and down and down, and he jumps into the pool, cast and all, and he swims me back up. And he swims me back up. He's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, I don't know if that's the question you really want to ask me. Where am I going? I'm like about to drown, and you're asking me where I'm going. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm about to die. And he saves me, he brings me back up, and he was like, "Hey, man, if you want to make it through this training, you got to figure out like how you're going to get through this swim." And again, talk about dealing with adversity and being able to get through problems, figuring out how to get through problems. They have, some Buds instructors that would help guys out on the weekends. And sometimes you can get your classmates to help you out on the weekends. I spent every dying second trying to figure out, how to do the travel and how to do the float, because I wasn't going to get kicked out for the float. Like I just made it through Hell Week. I made it through Hell Week with class 240. I'm not going to get kicked out because I can't do this float and make it to the next level. This was stupid. And so every dying moment that I had, all I did was just get in that water. And so if I couldn't do the float and stay up, what did I do? I learned how to just swim in circles. And I swam in a circle, kick, 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 stay close to the surface, get my air. And I kept doing that, learned how to do that, got the endurance, finally was able to conquer that beast, which was great. But that sucked. That time, especially when I'm scooping myself and going down and down and down and down, I'm like, yo, is this really what you want to do? Was I meant to go and do this job? And figuring out how to tame that beast, that took a lot. That really took a lot from me. And I'm glad I met the challenge head on and I was able to successfully get through on the other side. But if I didn't do that, if I didn't spend that time, yeah, no way I would have made it through.
Well, so when you're doing that though, I've never heard you mention about fear of not being able to do that. You mentioned, fear because you lost the fight, fear going to the SAS, SBS, but I've never heard you in our conversation say that you feared not passing Buds. Did you
Yeah.
not fear it?
So, I think I had a misperception of my capability and what it was that I was able to do. But you have to go into the program with a certain degree of confidence. You can't not go in there with a certain degree of confidence. I went in there, and so September 7th, I graduate from A school. So September 11th, I'm supposed to get married, right, to my wife. September 11th happens, nothing's happening, can't get married. The 12th, I get married on the roof of my wife's friend's house. 13th, get married at the magistrate in Miami. September 21st, I check into Buds. I told her and I told myself there is absolutely no plan B. So I didn't really give myself an exit or an exit strategy. It was like, I am going to make it through this program, kind of like 50 Cent, get rich or die trying. I am absolutely going to make it through this program. Very auspicious. Never really thought that I wouldn't make it through the program until, I start scooping myself and almost drowning myself in, doing drown proofing. Never really ever thought. And the other time was when I got SIPE. And I didn't tell you this story. This is probably the first time where I really started developing a little bit of doubt. I get SIPE, swimmer-induced pulmonary edema. So it's like a advanced form of pneumonia. Never had any adversity, had made it through every other evolution, passed every room inspection, never got beat down terribly bad, or where I thought like, oh my God, I have to quit. I was like, I was all for it, all the beat downs, everything. Didn't necessarily like it, but I was all for it because I thought it was, character building. And I thought it was like, hey, this is the process. It's supposed to be hard. So I was good about it. Get SIPE. I'm in my in my Bud's barracks room. And they call my wife and they tell her, hey, you can come see your husband with my son, 3-year-old son at the time. You can come see him. He has SIPE. He's, on antibiotics. Hopefully he'll be okay soon enough. She comes and I'm really feeling sorry for myself. Completely sorry for myself. Sitting in my room, she comes in. My son comes in first, sees me, runs out of the room. Like, that's not my dad. That's not my dad. And I'm like, I was already broken. And then that breaks me even more because I'm doing this to help give us a better life, and help lead us to our next chapter. And here I am, I'm laid up in bed, weak, with SIPE. My wife comes in after she kind of consoles my son. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know if I can make it and this and that. And I had already told my wife, I'm going to make it no matter what. And my wife listens to me sitting there blubbering, and she just goes and smacks me in the face. And I'm like, I kid you not. I kid you not. Smacks me as hard as she can in the face. And she goes, hey, you shut up. She's like, I don't know who this guy is talking to me right now, but this is not the guy that gave up his life in New York, doing all the different things that he did, gave up on the Thai boxing school, gave up on the modeling career, gave up on all these different things that he was doing, making money in New York, to come to a job where he's making absolutely no money. This is not the guy who almost drowned himself, at the beach in Long Island because he didn't know how to swim and decides to go swim with his Baywatch lifeguard canister, thinking that, oh yeah, this is easy to go swim in the ocean, has never swam in the ocean before, and then almost drowns. And then the lifeguards actually have to come out and save him, even though he has his Baywatch life canister. This is not the guy that, trained and had eye surgery and got letters of recommendation and did all these different things, had to get his American citizenship. This is not that same guy that's talking to me right now, sitting here blubbering about, you don't know this and that. She's like, shut up. I don't want to hear that. I don't like this guy. I don't like who he represents and what he's doing. And this guy is not allowed to come back to the house. So until that guy goes away and the other guy comes back, you can't come home. And when you get told that, you have to make a course correction. So for me, like I said, everything was, there is absolutely no plan B. I'm going to make it or else. When you get from, the CEO of the house that you're not allowed to come back home unless you do a course correction, you figure it out real quick. And figured it out, came back in the next Hell Week, class 240, absolutely smashed it. At the end of Hell Week, so I don't know how many guys you've ever seen come out of Hell Week. Have you ever seen any guys come out of Hell Week?
Like see them once they're done with it?
Done with it? Yeah. Have you ever seen any? Have you been in
Not
court?
right at the finish of it, no.
Okay. Guys that come out of Hell Week, they look like they're from the Night of the Living Dead. That TV show, or whatever that is, that TV show with the zombies,
Oh yeah.
they look like that. Guys are completely trash. They all walk with a limp. They all have like these bald patches on their heads. Everyone looks terrible. I finished class 240's Hell Week. I told you I was doing the Ujjayi breath. I was feeling good. Didn't want to sleep. I was like, yo, I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to give up any tells or anything. I don't want to give anything up. I have to make it through. Completely made it through. Finish. I'm like, I'm good. I had a piece of rash, chafing on my leg, this big. That was all I had. I asked my buds instructor, I was like, hey, man, can I go home and spend the weekend with my wife? I'm going to be fine. I'm totally good. The doctor signed off on it, and I go and I go home like as if nothing had ever happened. I'm not going to say that I absolutely sailed through it, but if you would have seen me from the first Hell Week to the second Hell Week, two completely different things. I think what was important about that was the unknown was known at that point in time. So I was mentally prepared for what was coming. And I had a plan, a better plan than what I had before. Like I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But now, having tasted it a little bit, I'm like, oh, that wasn't that terrible. All you got to do is just make it through every evolution. You make it through this evolution, you get a little bit of a break. You go and you run and you put out hard enough, they'll give you a break if your group did well. The other guys are going to get beat down. Just make sure you put out and you and your guys put out, and then you'll be fine. For me, that was the way of being able to make it through. Once I was able to understand the game, I was like, okay, everything is doable. I'm going to be able to make it through this program. Once I made it through my second Hell Week, I'm not going to 100% say like, yeah, absolute, because there are no absolutes, but I felt very confident in being able to make it through the program after that.
Do you think it was partly due? I mean, we know that your wife came in and and slapped you in the face.
Oh, no joke.
But that reminds me of your childhood.
Yeah.
That there was no quit. Do you think that that's what sparked the fire? Was the same fire that got sparked when you were a kid?
Maybe there could be a parallel there, but I think a lot of it also too was now I'm responsible for more than just myself.
Of course.
And that kind of goes with the whole thing. It's team gear, your gear, you. You know what I mean? And here it is. That's my team. And I told my team that this mission was going to be accomplished. So mission, team, then me. And it was always that. It was always that for me, especially with them. I didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't want to give them, any pause to think like, oh, life is going to be really sucky right now because you aren't doing what you said you were going to do. You're not doing your part. So I always had to make sure that I was doing my part. Is there maybe a parallel? Yes, but I think it was more about not following through on what I was supposed to do. My mission was supposed to be able to get through the program, become a Navy SEAL, and especially all the people that signed off on it, I had a responsibility to be accountable to them as well. So I always held that in super high regard, and I think that probably held a little bit more of a standpoint in terms of me being able to make it through the program.
It's an important time too when you're going through the program. We're talking 2001 and September. The world changes completely. I would think the training would change completely too, because the guys that are going through before, there had been some that had seen combat time and stuff, but I've had guys on the show that said that they were worried once they got through buds that they were never going to get to do what a SEAL does, that they were worried going on with active duty. For sure that something's going to happen after you're done with training. How do you look at it? Because of everything else you've talked about, your fighting and all that kind of stuff. Are you excited? Are you thinking, yeah, this is exactly where I need to be in life?
Yeah, DJ, like it's kind of weird. And I've been actually thinking about that exact question. I don't really think I really knew what I was expecting when I got into the team.
Okay.
I read all of these different books. I had all these expectations. But I don't really know if I really understood, if I really understood what I was actually getting myself into. Reading all these valorous things, all these incredible stories of all these people. And here I am, I'm making it through. Honestly, it was about the challenge more than anything else at first. I wasn't one of those guys that wanted to be a Navy SEAL from since he was 8 years old. I only thought about it as like, hey, this is going to help propel me to be able to do more executive protection work. Not to say that that's what my whole goal was, but getting into it, the Iraq War and Afghanistan wars were just kicking off. We had stuff, shock and awe campaign and all that type of stuff. We had Kosovo and all those things going on. I wasn't really, I wasn't really thinking like, I'm about to go to war up until September 11th happens. And I check in 10 days after that to selection. And it's like, oh, I check in. You should have seen the mass exodus of BUDS instructors and BUDS instructors that just wanted to go get into the fight. I had BUDS instructors that didn't have combat time, had no combat time at all. And now these guys are teaching me how to do, things, that would prepare somebody to go to war. And these guys had never gone to war themselves, except for some of them. Like Johnny Hoffman, former DevGru, was over at the parachute team. But I mean, some of these guys had no experience, no wartime experience. So for all of us, it was like a learning experience for everybody. I did like a couple platoons, and I had guys that were still on instructor duty or had gone back to a team and then went to PACOM, to the Pacific Theater, but didn't go to CENTCOM right away. And so now these guys come back in, and I have BUDS instructors who had never gone, had done 2 deployments and had never gone to CENTCOM, but were in PACOM or whatever. And I have more experience than them, which was weird. You know what I mean? And it only really kind of, like, my first job, we were preparing for my first deployment. My platoon that I told you that I was with, the break glass in case of war platoon, that platoon got disbanded just because liberty risks and all the crazy stuff that platoon used to do. And so it's like we got disaggregated and put into a new platoon, and then we ended up augmenting SEAL Team 7, right? From SEAL Team 5, we ended up augmenting SEAL Team 7. My first job in the Navy, coming into the teams, our job was to protect the vice president of Iraq at that time. That was my first deployment. The first 3 months of my deployment was to do that. And then afterwards, we were going to do kinetic operations for the other half of the deployment. It's not a real sense of reality when you're an American SEAL team going to a foreign country and you're protecting a foreign dignitary, and you're living in the green zone and you're living in a palace, and you go to the U.S. Embassy and you hang out at the U.S. Embassy on the weekends, and they've got pool parties, and then they do the Baghdad super frog in the green zone. That's not reality. Reality kicks in on the second half of the deployment, when now you're doing kinetic operations and you're supposed to go down Route Irish, and Route Irish is no good anymore because they had, a bunch of cars got IED'd and this and that and the other, and you're trying to get from there to BIOP, and you're like, this is not cool right now. Like, am I about to die? And then the slow realization is like, hey, you're about to do something where you potentially could die. And being from another country and then giving up my citizenship to that country to do this program, you start wondering, it's like, was this the right thing? Was this the right move? But for me, it always came back to, this country gave me everything. I feel obligated to do what I'm doing right now. But this is not what you're reading in the books, or this is not like some fantasy thing. This is something with real consequences, with real things that can absolutely happen, that could either leave you maimed, injured, or dead. And you don't really think about that initially. You only really think about more the shiny object, which is the trident that you get on your chest after doing all this physical stuff and all these different crazy hard evolutions. The government spends so much money on you. You don't really think about the real ramifications of the things that can happen to you until once you're really in it. And once you're really in it, it's like, okay, sink or swim. Are you going to stay and you're going to do it? Do you like what you're doing? If you like what you're going to do, great. This is the place where you want to be. And once I got into it and I saw how it wasn't just about AJ, this guy with certain skill sets or this and that and the other, it was an amalgamation of a ton of people with a lot of capability and with certain skill sets and abilities that you won't find outside somewhere else. That's when I really it started resonating with me, and I really loved being in the teams and doing what we were doing. Happy about it.
Okay, so let me ask you, the first time you go, we know when you're at the embassy and all that kind of stuff that's kind of a fantasy world. Second half of the deployment takes over and you see it. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Yep.
The first time you're in combat, I'd like to know if you, because I'm sure you do, sights, sounds, smells, emotions that you're feeling that first time you're in a gunfight.
I'm gonna tell you a story,
Okay.
and this is a ridiculous story too. So at that time, we had these things that we were doing where we had triangulated positions, 3 positions overwatching a particular place where insurgency was known to congregate, or an area where insurgency was known to congregate. At that time, they used to have this particular thing they used to do. They used to put a casket up, and the casket was black, and in gray writing it said, "Insurgents, leave now, or this will be your fate." This is what it says on this casket. Cool. All right. And so we're watching the area and seeing what's going on, and and trying to figure out how we're going to roll up these people or whatever it is. I'm not going to tell you exactly how the operations went,
Of course,
because it was definitely a little bit more than just rolling up on people, right? So we're seeing how those operations are going to go, but you have to go and occupy houses to be able to have these overwatch positions, right? You go and you occupy a house. What does that mean? You're going into somebody's house. You're not an invited guest. You make yourself an invited guest, and you spend time with these people, and you become a cooperative group together. You let them know, hey, if you comply, if you do X, Y, and Z, everything will be okay. If you don't, there will be potential consequences. Let's just make this easy. We don't want to have any problems. Let us be in your house for a couple of days. The worst thing about these operations were, and did you see Warfare?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were doing that, I believe, since like 2004, 2005. We were doing that type of operation 2004, 2005. Maybe not 2004, definitely 2005, because that's the exact same thing that they were doing. We were doing that in 2005. And I know Ray very well. He was he was in my Buds class. We were in active valor together, running on the back of the submarine and doing all of that. And I remember it's about 72 hours in when we're doing this operation. Pattern of life for those people that you're living in their house, it completely changes. And those people aren't stupid in the town. If, Anwar and his wife don't come outside for like 3 days, the kid isn't coming outside, nobody's going to the market to go get vegetables or meat or whatever it is, something's wrong. Knocking on the door, nobody's answering the door. It's not like people go on vacation and you're like, hey,
Right.
Saddam, I'm leaving, I'm going on vacation. Can you watch my house? It wasn't like that. Everyone knew everybody's business in these neighborhoods. When these people don't come outside, pattern of life is disrupted. Now they start telling people like, hey, Anwar and his wife Shira haven't come outside in days, and I haven't seen Yusuf, haven't seen the little kid Yusuf, and something's wrong. They tell the insurgents. 72 hours in, we're like, yeah, nothing's happening in that square that we're sitting there watching. Yeah, let's call for extract. This is a bust. Call for extract. Hear the Humvees. They have a curfew at night. People aren't allowed to go do anything. If you're found outside after curfew, potential consequences, and most likely the only people that are going to be out are going to be insurgents. You hear the Humvees coming from the base, and you hear the whine of the Humvees, and then you hear boom, 2 giant booms, and you're like, oh snap, this is not good. And then I had just finished my watch of the people, and effective fire is coming into the house. PKM fire, AK fire is coming into the house, literally in this room that I'm sitting in front of. And I'm on the ground, and I was just like, it's 140 degrees in the house. There's no AC. I just wanted to take my kid off for 2 minutes. I fall asleep. Within 10 seconds of me falling asleep, effective fire is coming into the house. All my stuff is not necessarily yard sale. It's right there, but you feel like it's a yard sale
Right.
when you're crawling and trying to get out of wherever you're at. I got the Mark 48 machine gun. I'm a brand new guy. And I'm like, yo, if my chief sees me without my body armor on, I'm dead. Oh no, actually, I'm about to die from these bullets coming in the house. So let's get behind this wall and then think about what your chief's going to do later.
Right.
And then you get up on the top of the roof, you start looking for targets, this and that and the other, and it's scary. And then all of a sudden, you hear the booms go off, and you're like, yo, are our Humvees blown up? Are we even going to be able to get home? And you're thinking, okay, now it's like the Mogadishu mile, and we got to run back to the base. And I'm like, oh, it just got real, and it just got real and it got scary. And then finally, they're like, yeah, hey, we made it. But we're not coming to you because you guys just were in a tick. Now you have to come to us. And you're like, for real? Like, I got to run to you. I don't have like the protection of the Humvees, with the 50 cals or whatever. And it's scary when you're thinking about stuff like that. You know what I mean? Now you got to walk. Those guys have they got the gig is up. You don't know where they're at. They have all the surprise and all the elements of everything on you. You don't know what you're going to be doing. And getting into the vehicles and then making it back home, you don't know if you're going to get blown up again. And you spend a whole rest of your deployment going into like Bradley fighting vehicles. I actually packed that whole idea of Bradley fighting vehicles away. I didn't think about that at all until I saw Warfare. And I forgot all about like, oh yeah, you could have been IED'd a million times. I never thought about that anymore. I just packed that and compartmentalized that away just because it was like, yo, this sucks. I don't necessarily like this part of the job, but it's a facet of the job. And I got lucky to not have anything bad. I still got all my fingers and my toes. I think I'm relatively not crazy. You know what I mean? I think I still have, some sanity, and, I can still speak English a little bit, which is great. But it's scary when you go out and you go and do these things and you have no baseline of understanding. Everything that you read is fantasy until you really go out and you go do it.
When you go out and do it, like you were talking about on that, because that's almost exactly that movie. I know that's him bringing his concepts of what happened to him into it.
Yeah.
When you do it, and you said that this is a part of the job that you don't like. After 2001, that was one of the main parts of the job, was that kind of stuff. So you're going to be doing that, long term. Do you remember a moment where you felt like really alive doing that, where you thought, I mean, different than you ever felt, different fighting, different the modeling, all that, where you really felt like, man, this is the best life I could have?
Yeah, 2005 when we started doing the kinetic operations, and this is something I told what's his name? So fast forward a little bit, we're at the premiere for Act of Valor. It's like 2012. And I'm sitting next to Kurt Hammett, and I'm relaying a story to him about, hey, you have no idea how electrifying it is to be in a team room getting ready to get out on an operation, right? And it's a kinetic operation that you're about to go do, and everyone is 100% focused. And in the background, you have like, I'm getting chicken skin right now thinking about it. Everyone is focused. You got Metallica playing in the background, and everyone is just like ready to go out and like rage, but controlled rage. Those times in the team room getting ready, and you are so prepared, you are so ready to go and do whatever it is that you're going to go do, and you feel this level of confidence that I can't really describe it coming from anything else. The level of confidence that you feel from that from being associated with a whole bunch of other people that are on that same plane, on that same mindset, that same feeling of like, oh yeah, we are going to absolutely go crush it tonight. And those are the days where, for me, everything was 100% worth it. It's like you go in the team room, you've trained so much, you've trained so hard, and you have 4 to 6 hours to go and show your best. And you know that that's what you're going to try and put into it. And there's no perfect ops. Nothing ever goes according to plan. But you have 4 to 6 hours to give the best representation of you while you're out in the bush or wherever it is that you're at. That feeling of anticipation of being able to leave the wire and go and do that, be able to, one, successfully make it there with all your measures that you have in place, to counter IEDs. Then you get set up. You go to the house and you break in. One of my jobs, fortunate for me, I was a breacher. You have your assistant breacher. He breaches the first door. I breach the second door. You go in. You start doing your clearance, and it goes like clockwork. When you have that kind of thing happening, it's really a hard thing to describe. It just feels so satisfying. And it's one of those things where you want more and you want more and you want more of that. And I used to love, we would go out and it would be, there would be, you would up sometimes 2-3 times a night. In the early Iraq war, you would up 2 or 3 times a night. You'd
You
have
talking about
like, oh,
follow-ons?
hey, we just got this little, follow-on operations.
Yeah.
You'd have like sometimes 2 afterwards. Okay, cool. And then I'm done in a couple hours of work, and then I get to go eat, maybe work out, and go to sleep all day and do this again. Once you start getting into that battle rhythm, you really start digging it. You know when it was I'll tell you when was really one of my favorite times. My third deployment, going back to Iraq, right? Not doing the same thing that we were doing before. We were a recce squadron, and we were on Kawasaki side-by-sides. I love that deployment. First off, we're up by the Al Anbar Desert in Rutba, up by the Syrian border. And we're a recce squadron. Our whole job was to just patrol the whole entire Al Anbar Desert. We're looking for rat lines. We're looking for insurgent activity. We're doing this and that and the other. And we're inventing new TTPs because they hadn't had the side-by-sides inserted by helos. We were helping to develop that concept. We didn't have pinto mounts or swing arms for the Mark 46s. We didn't have any of that stuff. We didn't have capability of really being able to fix, laws or Carl Gustav rockets onto your side-by-side so you can use them and have that capability. And here you are, it's like Mad Max going out and you're patrolling the Al Anbar Desert. Literally, it's crazy, doing vehicle interdictions with a couple hopped up tan golf carts. What kind of craziness is that? It's almost not real to go and do that, but to have that capability and be able to go do that. And then now you get shot at in these golf carts and you have like these 60-mile-an-hour rockets where speed over security is your thing. And having that, the exhilaration of having that, I thought it was, once after the first deployment was done, it was like everything else was fun. Everything else became fun. Fun, of course, obviously with a certain measure of caution, but everything else was fun, and I loved all the time.
Was there a particular song?
Oh, one.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, and then Sandman, Enter Sandman. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, because you came from that punk background. So,
yeah.
That's right up your alley. Did that throw anyone for a loop coming from that punk background? Because I know a couple other guys. Jason Tushin came from that punk background too.
Yep. JT came from there. There's a couple guys who have the punk background, but being a black guy in the SEAL teams, you're in a microcosm within a microcosm, right, of the Navy, right?
Right.
But being a black guy who was a punk rock guy and then going to the SEAL teams, they're maybe one of one, maybe one of one that way. I don't, there wasn't many.
Right.
Remember in Highlander, there can only be one. That's what it was for me. But I mean, that song, like having those type anthems prepare you and get you ready. Like I mean, so you heard of the Cro-Mags?
No, I've never heard of them.
New York City hardcore punk band. This guy, John Joseph, like that guy, that's like my homeboy for life. So interesting story. When I was getting ready and everything, doing all my stuff, living in New York City as a young person, I almost was homeless. John Joseph kind of put me under his wing when I was like, you one of these young kids, going to the hardcore shows. He's like, come to the Krishna temple. Now, again, learning a lot of really good life points and a lot of great learning was happening. Tells me to come to the Krishna temple. I go to the Krishna temple, not to become like a devotee and paint my head and start wearing the yellow robes and this and that and the other. But this was like the hardcore warriors, New York City hardcore punk rock warriors who were like kind of like devotees of the Cro-Mags, who were learning from the Cro-Mags about, being hard, but then also having that side of your life where it's like, hey, no, you can be hard, but you can also have this skill set of understanding about, different ways of life. You can understand about, certain concepts and parables which are good things for your life skills and like decision making process. And that's what I learned from him from that. But don't get it twisted. Like I'm listening to, Absolution. I'm listening to Warzone. I'm listening to the Cro-Mags. I'm listening to Murphy's Law. I'm listening to all of these different bands. And then now, I mean, I'd already been listening to Metallica like since I was a young kid, working in New Jersey in this warehouse that used to sell animal pet supplies. And used to listen to Metallica all the time, mandatory Metallica. That was the thing. And now you have a whole bunch of people that all just want to like prepare for war, and this is what you're listening to. Ah, man, it was. I'm getting chicken skin talking about it right now. That was you don't like. I don't think people really understand like how one music is a vehicle for being able to get people to do whatever it is. It can really be one of those vehicles to get people to do what you want them to do. And then two, it's just like it just sets you up for success. You listen to good music, you just become that mindset where it's like, yo, nothing can happen to me. I cannot lose. I cannot go wrong.
Is there a particular time when you're in uh, either combat or just in the Navy itself? Is there a particular time where you kind of get disillusioned? We've talked about, just now of where you felt the most alive. Is there any point in your career where you feel a little disillusioned about either what's going on, about the rotations, anything like that that you ever come across?
That only came on after I finished all my time deploying. I did 5 deployments. That only came when I was on my last shore duty rotation as the senior enlisted advisor at Advanced Training Command in Imperial Beach. And that was between 2018 and 2021. That disillusion only came at that time. And that was around the time when COVID was happening. And just seeing Naval Special Warfare, who, when I came in, we were the unconventional warriors, and we always were able to pivot and figure out another way when something was happening. And then I'm hearing, stories of guys getting kicked out or were about to get kicked out because, oh, well, before it was like, I don't want to take this flu vaccine. Okay, cool. You talk to your corpsman. I'm like, hey, listen, I don't want to take this flu vaccine. I never get sick. I don't want to take this flu vaccine for any particular reason. I've already taken anthrax and all these other things. That's where some of the disillusionment might have come in, but I didn't allow that to really be up on the surface. That only came out a little bit later. But now you're telling me I have to go get this COVID vaccine. I'm like, and then I'm seeing how you're treating people. And then I'm seeing that people are all of a sudden choosing sides and camps. And it just was like, yeah, you know what? This is not the same Navy that I came into. It's now it felt like it was almost more becoming more political. And I didn't really like that. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm real good. And especially at that time, too, there was a lot of the talk about, and you know what? I'll be the first person to champion any woman that makes it through buds. I will 100% be the first woman that makes it through. I will be the first one to give her a high five, congratulations, pat on the back. Great. As long as you made it through the same selection criteria I did and everybody else did, and the legacy criteria that everybody else went through, you make it through that, of course, I'm going to give you respect. But what is the whole, what is the impetus to make that happen? I don't necessarily see that. And if you change the standard, it's going to change the quality of people that you have coming into the program. Why don't you just make a woman's selection criteria, as opposed to saying that you have to change the criteria for everybody else? Just make another completely different program. Not that hard, and not for nothing. I don't really hear that many banging on the door. Don't many hear that women banging on the door to try to make it into buds. Onesies, twosies, great. But to change the whole legacy program to yield maybe one, what is that one woman going to do for the whole entire community? Again, like I said, I have no problem with women being in the program, but to change the whole entire program just to serve one woman, possibly making it in after I don't know how many years of attempting to be able to make it in. 2013, I had a bet with one of the officers when I was doing my ops chief at SEAL Team 5. I had a bet with him because this is around that time when women were about to be accepted into the program. I was like, I bet you within the next 10 years, not one woman is going to make it through first phase. I'll bet my whole entire paycheck for the year that what one woman is going to make it through. And the guy's like, oh, no, it'll happen. I was like, okay, let's bet on it. You bet your officer paycheck. I bet my chief paycheck. Who won? Me. That guy didn't give me his money, though. So, but when I started seeing that type of thing happening, I was like, I don't understand why you want to change the standard. I don't understand also, too, why you want to kind of punish people for having beliefs or not wanting to take something that's not, you know, not been proven to be what it is. And then now you see guys are being, hey, we're sorry, we'll let you come back in, you'll get full back pay for all these years. But now you've already, you've already caused the pain. You told this person you were no longer good and you were kicking them out because of whatever, and now you want them to come back in. How can people trust you again after that? So for me, a lot of trust was lost, especially during that time period.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because when we talked before, you had a little a little disillusionment about the movie that you were in, and we've talked about it a little today, Act of Valor.
Yeah.
But I found out through Ty that not only were you guys told that you would be in it, because I guess you were in between, you had just done a deployment and you guys were kind of the ones that were in between, but you also weren't paid for anything that you did in it.
Yeah, imagine you get told, hey, you're going to be in this movie. Cool. All right. I already had my SAG card from doing stuff as a civilian before the Navy. I already had my SAG card, so I knew what that meant. And here I am, I'm going to be in a nationally broadcast movie or worldwide distributed movie. And awesome. Going to do this thing. It's all the Navy assets. Everybody active duty, or every military person was actually active duty in the movie. And here's the main characters of the movie. You would think that maybe the guys who are the main characters in the movie might get something, especially, they're getting screen time just like the actors, the primary actors that were in the movie. And you get told, well, first off, we were asked to do this movie. Then we got voluntold because the admiral said this will be done, and it's not going to be done. It's going to be done. And so you're like, all right, well, SEAL Team 5 had just come back off of deployment rotation. This is in 2009. We go and we meet the producers and the directors of the movie. It sounds like it's a great idea, but nobody wanted to do it because obviously at that time, the whole thing of anonymity and secrecy of the teams and this and that and the other, nobody wanted to do it. But then we thought of the alternative. Okay, are we going to have, is it going to be like Navy SEALs, the movie? Great movie, iconic movie. A lot of guys loved it, but
Fantastic movie. I absolutely love
fantastic
it.
movie, but cheesy as hell.
Yeah,
Mad cheesy.
absolutely.
Mad cheesy. So we didn't want to necessarily do, a movie that was going to be another cheesy movie. So the idea, after speaking with the directors, they were going to take three iconic stories from naval special warfare history, and they were going to weave them into the tale. You had the story of Mark Robbins, who got shot in the eye and got his eye blown out. You had the story of Mike Day, who got shot 27 times and came back to live. And the other story was, oh man, I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who jumped on the grenade and
Okay.
he saved his teammates from being blown up. He jumped on a grenade. I'll remember his name in a little bit. Sorry to anybody who's watching out there and I don't remember his name. I'm old and I don't remember a lot of things right now. But we figured it would be better to have actual people that have actually done the job. And I mean, really, are we talking about Academy Award appearances, or are we talking about people to try to convey the story and we just try to have normal banter, like what it would be? And that's what we ended up, agreeing that that's what it was going to be like. Try to keep it just like how team guys would do it. And that's what we ended up doing. And I thought it was a great project to work on. And then we got told that, yes, the Admiral says you are going to do this. So we figured, all right, well, look, we all kind of knew each other, who each other were. We figured this would be a good core group to go and do the project together. And then we figured, let's go and do it. It would be fun. But then you think, okay, cool, we're doing a movie, we're going to all the premieres. And then you hear, yeah, you're not going to get paid anything. All you're going to be getting is your per diem. And that's it. And you're like, really? Not going to get anything at all? How about you tuck it away in some kind of like an account that I can access like 10, 15 years after I get out of the Navy? Yeah, the Navy wasn't having anything of that. And you know what? It kind of sucks that the Navy did that. It would have been kind of forward thinking for the Navy to say like, hey, yeah, you can get this and that or whatever, and you can do this for them, and you can set these guys up for success. But that wasn't the mindset of the Navy at the time. And you know what? It's whatever. It's okay, because some guys ended up propelling that into other things, like like myself, been able to do some other TV shows, been able to do some other movies, and have some really good experiences from that, where I got to make some real money. Like real money. Like way more than what you make in the Navy money. And which is great. But that's not the reality that the Navy wanted us to have, because it might have been a conflict of interest. It's not really a conflict of interest though. It's like, hey, you're telling us that we're doing something that's within the scope of our jobs. We're enjoying it, but then we're also, Mikey Mansour. That's the guy, Mike Mansour, the guy that jumped on the grenade. Sorry about that, everybody. But you're doing something that's, you feel that you want to convey the real story, the real intent behind all of that, and you're able to do all the action, you're able to do the stunts, you're able to do everything. So why not do it, and why not try to make it as realistic and as good as possible? So
Well, so here's the thing though, and tell me your take on it. You guys did catch a little bit of blowback from people, either inside the community or outside the community, for the movie. How do you deal with that? Because like you talked about, the anonymity, but then you also want to get a good product out there, because I think this started as a recruitment thing because the
sure.
numbers were down. How do you go back to that family, that brotherhood, and talk to them about, hey, we did it for this reason? One, we got told, which they're never going to believe that, or maybe
Yeah.
they will. And two, we just tried to put our best face out there. How do you deal with that kind of stuff? Because it's got to be maddening to you to have to do that, and then to have to put up with that shit on the backside of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum to have. You get told that you have to do this movie. There was a lot of mindset of like, oh yeah, you never write about anything, you don't say anything, you don't do anything that's gonna, besmirch the community. But here we are, we're trying to, make a good thing, and we're trying to represent the community well. And on some level, like I said, we the guys that decided that they were going to end up doing the project, we ended up saying, you know what, you can't please everybody, and there's always going to be the guys that are like, yeah, you should have never said anything. Like, okay, my mentor, this guy named A.D. Clark, he was a plank owner of SEAL Team 2. He was in the Phoenix program. He did all these amazing things. That guy went to the grave, never told a story to me, and he was mentoring me. And I thought there would have been so many amazing things to be able to hear. And I would have loved to have learned more about the job so that when I came into it, I would have a better idea about what the heck it is that I'm getting myself into. But again, like I said, you've got these guys that are going to be like forever, secret, it's going to go to the grave with you. I mean, you know what? Honestly, it's like, here's the age of the internet. All the stuff that you do right now, open source. People can find out almost everything and anything about what it is that you're going to do. And we kind of have to modernize and accept that this is the reality of the future. So do you tell stories that are good and show the naval special warfare in a good light? Or do you just keep perpetuating the mindset of, well, you don't tell anybody anything. Okay, well, if you don't tell anybody anything, how do you get more people to come into the program? How do you get quality people that could have been influenced by something like this to come into the program? How do you get them if you don't want to give them anything at all? You don't. You know what I mean? It's like, either you're going to get all the bad apples, all the guys that are going to quit. But if you show somebody who might have been on the fence, teetering on the fence about whether or not if they're going to come into the program, hey, this is what it is. This is what these guys do. You can be part of this story. You can make your own story. You can make, not necessarily that everyone's going to make an act of valor, but you can be your own story. You can have your own chapter in this, long history of naval special warfare. And for us, that resonated with us. And our mindset was like, if that doesn't resonate with anybody else, I really can't do anything about that. I can't change your mind. And if you're going to hate me because I got told by the admiral that I will do this and that I wasn't able to do anything else, even though I was at advanced training command and I was doing instructor duty, I was told you will detach and you will work on this project. That's orders, and sometimes you got to do things that you don't want to do. But we felt that this was a project that was worthwhile and can't please everybody. And if they don't like it, can't please everybody. I'll tell you this. Having done that, the amount of people even today now that say, I joined the Navy because of that movie. For me, and I've said this other times before, for me, that made the whole process worth it. I love the fact that I was able to help influence or be part of a group of people that helped influence quality people to come into the teams. People that are guys that are legendary operators right now over at the command at the tier 1 commands, legendary operators, guys not even in the Navy that I know that went SF and have gone and screened for Delta. I know guys like that because they saw that movie. That forward propelled them to think, this is me. This is what I want to do. I can do this too. This has helped me cement that decision in my head right now. So for me, I like that. So I will always, of the mindset is like, I'm a forward thinker. If somebody's going to be closed-minded and not open to accepting what the reality of things are, I can't do anything about it. And I'm just going to be like, well, I'm going to just keep moving on my own pace. I'm just going to do me. And I'm going to continue trying to be a good person, be a good operator, be a good influence to other people, be a good mentor to people that want to come in. And I can't really be worried about that negative energy that's going to be coming from other people. That's how I handled it. I don't know how everybody else did, but that's how I handled it.
All right. Last day of active service, first day as a civilian. Emotions, what you're feeling, because you've just lived the life of a pirate for all those years. Now it's coming to an end and this new page is starting. So I'd like to hear what you felt on that last day of active duty, that first day when you woke up as a civilian.
I'm going to tell you, I think for the last 3 years before I was getting out of the Navy, I'd already been my last deployment came back was 2017. 2017, check into Advanced Training Command. I'm running the comms department. I'm the chief of the comms department. 2018, I take over as the SEA of Det Coronado. We have 19 courses of high risk instruction. I had 200 people that worked underneath me. I had an $80 million budget. We had a student throughput of probably close to 20,000 a year, students a year. So heavy rotation. I was in charge of so many different things. And every day of that last 3 years, I loved it. I love being able to advocate for my people that didn't necessarily have the ability to be able to advocate for themselves. But I used to tell my friends, 3 more years, 2 more years, year and a half. And I'm like, man, I can't wait to smoke weed. I'm saying all these different things, and people are like, you're gonna smoke weed? I'm like, yeah, I never did that before. I'm gonna smoke all the weed in the world. I'm gonna be so freed, so liberated. I'm gonna have so much time on my hands. I'm gonna go surfing every day. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And then I start thinking about, damn, what am I gonna do for work? Coming up onto terminal leave. I put in my paperwork for terminal leave. I have my replacement. What happens to me? In about a month and a half before I'm about to go on terminal leave, I get asked to, maybe about 2 months before that, I get asked to work on SEAL Team, the TV show. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Go work on SEAL Team. Finish doing that episode. Jared Shaw, who was, one of the characters in Terminal List, he's like, hey, I have this part that I'm going to be reading for. And can you help me with my lines? Cool, yeah, sure. Help him with his lines. Comes back like a couple weeks later. He's like, hey, I think there's this part here that you would be really great for. You should read for this thing. I'm like, all right, cool. I read for the part. I get called by Jared. Hey, I want you to sit in on this meeting with me here. You're going to meet with one of the producers. It's Chris Pratt. I'm like, all right, I'm in this meeting with Chris Pratt and Jared Shaw, and it's for a character on the Terminal List. Chief Cortez on the Terminal List. And Chris is like, okay, yeah, great interview. I get called to do the Terminal List. This is right before I'm about to go on terminal leave. No, that was probably like late 2020, right? Because 2021 is when I retired. Terminal leave is about to start. After I finish doing Terminal List, the stunt coordinator calls me up in March, early March, and was like, hey, you're about to get out of the Navy, right? I'm like, yes. He's like, you want to come work on a movie? I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, you're going to be the stunt double for one of the 4 main characters of the movie. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? He's like, you need to pack your bags and you need to come, and you're going to be living in New Orleans for the next 6 months. Like, signed, and I'm going. I take off. I tell my replacement, yo, I'm out. March 15th, I leave. I land in New Orleans, and I'm living in New Orleans for the next 6 months. So it wasn't a reality that I just left my job and I'm about to step into the unknown. I already had work. I felt good about everything. I'm like, yo, I can't lose. Remember, I was telling you, like, I made real money. I made super real money. I felt rich, coming off of that, coming out of the Navy, being on retirement, getting my 100% permanent and total disability, going and working on this movie, right? I was like, yo, I can't lose. I'm making all the money in the world right now. And I felt amazing. And then that's not reality, because being a stunt double for, somebody, Navy SEALs are cool. We have a lot of really great skills, but we're not necessarily stuntmen, even though we can do stuntmen things. There's a whole line and a whole list of stuntmen that were doing things before you were. And so stunt coordinator, I got lucky. I got a few more projects afterwards, but the stunt coordinator is not necessarily going to call you right away for every project. And then I remember there was like a time where I had no money, no prospects. I had my retirement, But now I'm starting to really worry and starting to get, sweat. But I'd already been out of the Navy for about a year and a half before all of that happened. So it was like a delayed reaction to that whole thing. It was not reality for me to get out. And I'm going to be 100% frank. Last 3 years in the Navy being a senior enlisted advisor, great job. Loved it. Loved the opportunity to be able to represent people that did not necessarily have the voice for themselves and be able to advocate for those people, uplift them, mentor them, do all those things. I love doing that type of stuff. I'm not working in an office, not if I don't have to. I'm not going to go and, do something that doesn't give me that sense of being able to have an adventure or do whatever. So I will always pivot to the thing that I think looks more fun, as opposed to going to the thing that's probably a sure shot and probably should be the safer bet for you to go to. But going and doing that movie, I'm not going to take that away. I'm not going to take any of the, the accolades or the credit away from that. But it wasn't reality, and it didn't really set me up for the glide slope of unemployment and not having that thing 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. I don't even have to work if I don't want to. I could be lazy and just be like sick bay commando if I really wanted to. Of course, that would go against my whole moral code.
Of course.
But you're getting paid no matter what. And now I got a job that, ended. I have this dream thing that just comes up out of nowhere, some more things that followed on, and then the carpet gets pulled out of you from underneath you. And now I'm scrambling. And now I'm stressed. And now I'm worried about, what am I doing? How am I going to make money? Where am I going? And I'm like, okay, do I just clutch at every straw that gets sent to me? Now the stress factor starts going up. Now I'm worried about, yeah, I have my retirement, but my retirement is not my active duty money. Even though I'm 100% permanent in total, that's not enough money when I got a house that's expensive. I've got a four-time world champion, kid world champion in jiu-jitsu, who trains at one of the most, he's one of the best schools in the world. We got to pay for that. I got a D1 rugby player in my house. I got to pay for that. That D1 rugby player's college is expensive. I got another son who was living somewhere with his boys, and then he's like, hey, I want to come back home. I have to feed 3 other men besides me who are expensive, and food is not cheap in San Diego. Gas is not cheap in San Diego, and I'm not making the money that I used to before. All that money is cool, but once that money runs out and you pay all your bills, and I got an expensive household, now you're stressing out about like, damn, what the hell am I going to do with myself? How am I going to make money to keep this up? And then I'm like, all right, I know what I'll do. I'll go to school. I'll get my degree and I'll be able to get something to happen. That doesn't help, because now I have more stress that's being added on to me. And I'm starting to get physiological change and all these things that are happening to me because I'm not thinking like, yo, what was the reality of me leaving the teams? And then I'm starting to second guess my path. Should I have left the Navy? Should I have gotten out of the Navy? Was this the right thing to do? And that level of stress, all of a sudden now, it's not what you're used to. And you'll find that a lot of guys, unless they have a plan in hand, and I guess, I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to be going to the movie. I went to the Honor Foundation, great, awesome training, helped me get ready, but it wasn't reality because I wasn't trying to go into the corporate world. And a lot of at that time, they were really pivoting and trying to get people to go more to the corporate world. Entrepreneurialism, that wasn't really the thing that they were really kind of doing at that time. They had some ability to be able to get you somebody to talk to if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, but that wasn't really the focus at that time. I'm like, yo, what am I really going to do? So I'm really stressed. And it sucks when you have that. But I'm going to tell you, again, more adversity helps you get that grit to figure out what it is that you want to do with yourself and start looking for other opportunities. As team guys, you can be extremely resourceful. You can find something to do. There's not a possibility of a team guy. And I mean, there is, There's guys that have failed and have ended up being like, well, I can't do this anymore. I got to go into the reserves. Or I can't do this anymore. I got to be a contractor and go back and go and do the only thing that I know. I had a real life before the Navy. I had so many other experiences. I didn't feel that going back and doing only that was the thing that was right for me. And I felt that, life has always been about the adventure for me. Even though this sucks right now, I got to take that a little bit. And, people have that 5-year plan methodology. I'm 4 years into my 5-year plan. And it's like, yeah, I had a lot of really awesome experiences. I did a little bit of floundering, trying to figure out what it was that I was going to do. But now it's like starting to put the aperture into focus right now and try to figure out exactly what it is that I want to do. And I feel good of having gone through that. But for some guys, that's not a reality. And I feel the only reason why I'm comfortable with that is because I was a jack of all trades. I lived a life of like 10 different people. So I've done this. I've been at that point where I felt like I was, at desperation and I was almost homeless. But it's a little different when you have kids and a wife and bills and all this type of stuff. So you have to be able to pivot and you have to be able to figure out what it is that you're going to do. So as it sucked to have that come like, November to January, I didn't make a dime. I didn't work. I didn't make any money. All I had coming in was my retirement money. And that doesn't necessarily sit well when you have holidays coming up. You got mad bills in the house. That doesn't necessarily sit well at home, but that this is the choice that that I've chosen. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to be forced into doing something that I don't want to do. Not at all. I don't care. This is my life. Yes, it might cause a little bit of angst at home, but I have to be able to go through this path to be able to where I'm going to next.
So that's a great transition. Let's talk about what you're doing now.
A lot of different things. Again, continuing the whole Rolling Stone of being a jack of all trades and master of none. I just on last Friday, I turned in my final paper to get my bachelor's. So I'm finally done with school and got my bachelor's now. And I'm going to start looking into executive level coaching. I've done that a little bit, but I want to professionalize myself a little bit more to be able to kind of do a little bit more of that on a higher executive type level. And especially maybe on a coaching level for high performance teams or high performing teams. I'd like to be able to start to do it because I think there's a lot of, transference. I worked in high performing teams for a long time, even before the Navy, working, being a semi-professional Muay Thai fighter, working in one of the first Thai boxing schools in America, especially in New York. I understand that mindset. I understand where it takes you. So I feel that I have a lot of good transference that I can give and pass off to people. Helping develop the NSW combatives program, I have a lot of lessons learned and things that I'd be able to transfer to people. I think also too, still having the option of being able to pick and choose what it is that I feel like doing, what resonates with me, is great. I love that. And I don't think that I can see myself doing anything else. So physical and mental performance coaching, we've helped develop. So I told you I have a D1 rugby player in my house. 2023, we went and we did a physical and mental performance workshop with that team, St. Mary's Rugby and the Gales. We went and we did this rugby workshop for those guys. 2024, they win the championship, which is awesome. That makes me feel good. Not only does that make me feel good, my son and I, my middle son, who's the D1 rugby player, he decides he's going to go to St. Mary's. This is his first year. He's going into college. And here I come to help give the beat down to their team. And then in 2024, they win the championship. We come back again in 2024. They didn't win the 2024-2025 championship, but again, being able to help high performing teams achieve greater heights or be able to achieve things which may feel to be impossible and be able to get that team unity and to be able to get that motivation to be able to all of them be able to see a particular goal and drive towards that goal. I love doing that type of stuff. But then also too, I have a thing that I'm trying to work on right now. I have a thing that it's called Five on Black, and it's a lifestyle brand that I'm trying to develop with a partner of mine. That's taking a little bit of time because I think going to do school and being the world's greatest Uber for my son, who's the jujitsu practitioner, and having to be able to drop him off because I don't have a traditional job where I have to sit in the cubicle and I can do everything in my Prius office. You know what I mean? I can go and do everything in the office there. I have the opportunity to be able to do so many different things. I love having that ability to pick and choose what it is that I want to do. So, want to do those physical and mental performance workshops. I want to do executive level coaching. I want to do more speaking engagements, which I just did one for the East County Correctional Facility, Juvenile Detention Correctional Facility. I just did one speaking engagement for those guys there. And that was cool because it's like you've got kids that are like murderers, guys that are going to be in jail for life, possibly may get some sort of like commuting of their sentences. But it's like, hey, listen, I have a similar background, with getting myself in trouble with the law. I've been to jail, for certain things that, were not necessarily great. But, it's like, okay, how do you change that mindset? How do you change that methodology and go to the thing where maybe you're not comfortable? And maybe it's like, oh, is this the right thing to do? What is it going to look like to my friends who see me trying to do the right thing as opposed to staying here and festering with the crabs in the barrel? If you don't want to be with the crabs in the barrel, hey, this is what I did. Maybe you'll get something from this story and it'll help you pivot yourself away from that. So I love doing that. I love being able to talk to people and try to relate stories from my life and see whether or not if they resonate with anything, and maybe if it helps them, awesome. I love doing that. I love helping people. I love helping with martial arts. One of the things right now, I'm acting as a founder for MMA gym in San Diego right now called Teams MMA. And the gym is about MMA fighters, but we also have the background of a lot of active duty Navy SEALs that are training out of that gym. And some of the guys that are training out of that Navy SEALs are trying to go from their careers from the SEAL teams to become MMA fighters. And we have one guy who's a really good prospect, and hopefully he's going to end up being in, maybe one day he'll get himself onto the Ultimate Fighter show. One of the guys that's on the team for the gym that we're in right now, Jeff Creighton, he's in the Ultimate Fighter show right now. He's not a team guy, but he's part of the team's MMA team. And, it's great to be able to have people representing like that for the gym. So I love having opportunities to do things like that. And, and then I'm also doing executive protection and, consulting, then stunt work and acting. So I have a litany of things that I do. And for me, the greatest thing about it is I don't have Groundhog Day. I never have Groundhog Day. Everything is different. Everything is something that I choose to do. And everything is a unique experience that for me, you can't get that life anywhere else. And I've been living that life essentially my whole entire life. Why would I change that formula? It worked well for me before. That's what I'm going to continue to go and do.
So if people want to look into you a little more, where can they find you? This is social media, websites, anything like that.
I do have a website, jamesgroup.io, that people can look into if they're interested in me doing, like, let's say, some speaking engagements. Five on Black. Hopefully we'll be getting that started sometime this year. It's going to be the number 5 on Black, BLACK, or 5 on BLK. And that will be that lifestyle brand. Hopefully we'll be starting a little bit on that, but things like that, sometimes they take a little bit of time to be able to kind of foster. At Brian Babcock 2242, that's my Instagram handle. And then Teams MMA. If you look up Teams MMA on the web, you'll be able to find that there, and you can see what Teams MMA is all about.
All right, man, what's next? Other than everything that you just said, I wanted you to mention something that you didn't, but there's a show getting ready to come out that you have a pretty big part in. So let's tell them about that, and we can kind of wrap this up, because I think you and I could talk for 6 hours and not get everything out.
Yeah. I will be appearing August 27th. If you know anything about the Terminal List series, I was fortunate, like I said before, to play Chief Cortez opposite of Chris Pratt, his platoon. I was his platoon chief. And there's a new series that's going to be coming out August 27th with Taylor Kitsch, Tom Hopper, and Chris Pratt again. And this is going to be their storyline. It's called Terminal List Dark Wolf. And again, I get to come back and reprise the role of Chief Cortez. But what's cool about this is I don't die in this series, because in the Terminal List, I died. And, it's kind of funny a little bit. You're like, oh, the black guy got killed first. All right, cool.
It's not a horror movie.
Yeah, it's not a horror movie. The black guy got killed. That kind of sucks. But, came back in they allowed me to come back, and I made it rain on some strippers in the club in the third episode, which was kind of fun. But, that sucks. I wanted to be a little bit more into it. But, supporting role, of course, obviously, you have to take what you can get. But I'm hoping that a little bit more people are going to see me, and they're going to like what they see from Terminal List Dark Wolf. I get a little bit more action time, which is fun. And I don't die in this action time, and I get to look a little bit cool. I get camera time. I get, time where I'm on camera speaking. And this is going to be a fun project. And I highly encourage, if you're into the Jack Carr series, the Terminal List, this is going to be a really amazing ride. And I'm hoping, it sucks that I can't come back in season 2 or season 3 unless they have more flashbacks of the Terminal List. But the series is amazing. Jared Shaw, Ray Mendoza, I think he's going on to other things now because of Warfare. Warfare was amazing. And he's going to be doing bigger and better things, and more power to him, more power to Jared Shaw, more power to Jack Carr. I love seeing those guys getting out and doing other things, and hopefully more things like that will be in the future for me. But we'll see what's going to happen. But August 27th on Amazon Prime, Terminal List Dark Wolf will be coming out, and Chief Cortez will be coming back.
Yeah, your stripper scene, did it give you flashbacks of your best friend's mom whenever you were shooting that scene?
Well, unfortunately, I never saw Fran naked. I never saw Fran, doing her stripper job. Fran, how you doing? And, just calling you out because you were hot to me back when I was a kid. Frankie, don't be mad at me because I was in love with your mom. But, that's never got to see her do her work, her profession. But I always thought she was super hot. And yeah, the stripper scene was just a stripper scene. And, but yeah, no, never thought about Frank's. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a weird thing to think about right now, my friend's mom. But yeah, okay.
All right. Man, this has been an awesome conversation. Your story is absolutely amazing. I'm so happy. I'm so honored that you came on here. Guys, you know where you can find AJ. Let's talk about where you can find me. You can, as always, find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast. And you can find me on YouTube, where all these conversations, they're in video form, at the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. Your one-stop shop, though, it's going to be dtdpodcast.net. That's going to have audio. It's going to have video. It's going to have pictures of AJ. It's going to have a little more of his story on there on his episode page. You can find out everything that the show is doing in the future and what it's done in the past. Make sure that you share, like, subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend, all of those things. We're really trying to get those numbers up. We would like to hit 10,000 by the end of the year. So make sure you go there. If you like what we're doing, make sure that you subscribe, you do all those things. Let's talk about the guys that make this show happen, though. My buddy Hoot over at nomadicresearch.com. Every week I wear these shirts. If you want one, it's on their website, nomadicresearch.com. But if you want to look cool in anything that they have, shirts, hats, backpacks, just to look cool in life, look cool at the airport, that's where you're going to want to go. These guys really know what they're doing, and they make an incredible, fantastic set of gear that you can use. Anything that you would want from them, nomadicresearch.com. And if you get a hold of me, I can give you a discount code for some of their stuff. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Make sure that you check out everything that AJ's doing. Make sure that you check out Dark Wolf whenever it comes out. everything that he's been in, Act of Valor. Make sure you check that out. Warfare, like he said, with his buddy in there. That's going to be it for this week. That's AJ. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.